app. And
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, files released by Downing Street reveal Lord Mandelson asked for a £500,000 payout after being sacked. He was forced to step down as ambassador to the US last year over his ties with Jeffrey Epstein. Documents published earlier show he was eventually paid £75,000. Former Foreign Secretary James Cleverly has told Tonight with Andrew Marr he shouldn't have been paid anything.
The fact the government paid him a single penny is frankly amazing, because if he lied to get the job, then the government should have taken him to court, would have won, and would have not had to pay him a penny. I suspect the government paying Mandelson anything at all is a tacit admission that it was the government that fell short.
Mandelson has denied wrongdoing. The UK and more than 30 other countries have agreed to the largest ever release of oil from their emergency reserves. It's hoped the move will address a spike in prices as the war in the Middle East continues to rattle the market. President Trump says the war could end soon because there's nothing left in Iran to target. Sir Lawrence Freedman, the Professor of War Studies at King College London, has told Andrew Marr that although there's no sign of regime change, the conflict has gone quite well for the US.
They've destroyed a bit more of the nuclear capacity they said they'd already destroyed last June. They've taken out the bulk of the Iranian Navy. They've attacked lots of missile sites and so on. So in that sense, they can say it's going fine.
Sir Keir Starmer says plans to put up fuel duty are being kept under review. Petrol prices have already risen by 5 pence per litre since the war began at the end of last month. Hundreds of mortgage deals have also been pulled from the market as the crisis further affects the cost of living. The Home Secretary says a ban on a pro-Palestinian march planned for London this weekend will last a month. Organiser of the Al-Quds March had previously expressed support for Iran's late Supreme Leader. The Crown Prosecution Service has lost its appeal against the decision to throw out a case against one member of NECAB. Liam Ohani will not face terror charges after being accused of showing support for Hezbollah at a gig in North London. The case was thrown out last year because it was brought too late. LBC's Helen Hodinott has been following the case.
As soon as the decision was released this afternoon, the band posted a screenshot of it with the caption "NECAB 3, British Government 0. In a statement, Liam Ogohani, better known by his stage name Mo Kara, said this entire process was never about me, never about any threat to the public, and never about terrorism. It was always, he said, about Palestine and about what happens if you dare to speak up.
An inmate has appeared in court charged with the murder of Soham killer Ian Huntley. 43-year-old Anthony Russell will appear at Newcastle Crown Court tomorrow. Huntley, who was serving a minimum 40-year sentence for the murders of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, died on Friday. And the charity which runs Edinburgh Zoo has asked the Met Office to improve how forecasts are shown on weather apps. It claims misleading icons can cost it up to £40,000 a day. The Royal Zoological Society of Scotland says some apps show rain for the whole day, even if wet weather is only forecast for a short time. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 58 points at 10,353. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather, a windy night, especially in the north and west. Heavy rain for the north of Scotland and Northern Ireland. The odd shower elsewhere, a low of 3. Windy tomorrow with outbreaks of heavy blustery rain moving southwards. Drier but dull in southern England, a high of 14 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 4 minutes past 7 on LBC. I'm Iain Dale here with you until 10. Don't forget, you can watch the whole programme now on the LBC app, on Global Player and the LBC YouTube channel. Think about your own life, the things that you're responsible for, the judgment calls that you make. How often do you get those judgment calls right? Because if you're in politics, particularly if you're in a position of power within the government, you'd want to get most of your judgment calls right, because in effect, that's what we as voters judge you on. And I think successful prime ministers do that. They get 90% of the judgment calls right. Nobody, however long they're in office for, nobody is ever going to get every judgment call right. And I think it is true to say that over the last week or two, I think many people have come to the conclusion that Keir Starmer did get the judgment call right on Iran. Now, I personally don't believe that, but I completely understand why many people do. And this seems to be reflected in the polls now, where the latest poll today shows Labour up by 4 points. I don't think that judgment call was right, but he seems to be chiming in with public opinion on that. However, there's always a but, isn't there? However, today's release of the Mandelson files, all of the correspondence surrounding the appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the US last March, I think these files show some very, very, very good evidence that Keir Starmer's judgment was all awry on this. His national security advisor, Jonathan Powell, said it was weird that this appointment was being rushed through. There's all sorts of other things in these files which lead you to the conclusion that on this, the Prime Minister's judgment was wrong. So I want to spend this hour talking about the Prime Minister's judgment. Have you changed your view about his judgment, particularly over the war in Iran? And when you look at the decision that he made over Peter Mandelson, does that make you think, well, OK, he may have got the Iran thing right, but Mandelson, yeah, he really didn't? Or do you take the view that, well, actually getting the judgment call right on a war is far more important than an ambassadorial appointment? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Aggie Chambray, our deputy political editor, joins me. Now, you've been pouring through these emails and documents today, which were released, what, about 1:30, something like that. Yeah. What has it altered your view of the Prime Minister's decision-making during that process?
I don't think it really has, Ian. I mean, I think it's worth saying there's some extraordinary things in this document, absolutely extraordinary. But I think on what Keir Starmer knew, I think that we were aware that Keir Starmer knew that there had been reports of the relationship, friendship that had endured between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson. And indeed, in these report, the 147-page of documents today, we discover that, yes, Starmer was warned that Mandelson's association with Epstein posed reputational risks. In the due diligence document, it talks about Peter Mandelson reportedly staying at Epstein's house while he was in jail in June 2009. And there is also warnings from people like his national security advisor, who brought it up with Peter Mandelson, who was, of course, his then chief of staff, about the reputational risk. Again, Morgan McSweeney, then chief of staff, apparently said the issues had been addressed. And the Foreign Office Permanent Secretary, Philip Barton, also apparently had concerns around the appointment. Now, we also understand from these documents that Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, was offered classified briefings before he had his vetting clearance, highly classified briefings. An email.
So let me just stop you there. So the National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, warned the Prime Minister that this could be a risky appointment. And yet, despite being warned by the National Security Advisor of this, he was offered classified briefings, even though he wasn't authorised to have them.
Well, he raised concerns about the reputational risk with Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, not necessarily with the Prime Minister himself. Morgan McSweeney did say the issues had been addressed. But yes, that's right. So the 23rd of December, there was an email to Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, saying, we'll brief you further in person from the 6th of January onwards, including at higher tiers. Basically, those highly classified briefings. And emails then confirmed that his vetting clearance didn't actually come through until the 30th of January 2025. So we're talking about basically an entire month where he was having these highly classified briefings.
And this is important because Peter Mandelson was on the board of a Russian company chaired by Viktor Primakov, who's a close ally of Vladimir Putin. He had links to companies in Hong Kong and China. So therefore, Why on earth would anyone think that you should brief somebody who hadn't had security clearance?
Yeah, and that was one of the things as well that Starmer was warned that his ownership of Global Counsel posed a reputational risk given its high-profile clients, and also noted that Mandelson was an advocate for closer UK-China relations. And that's before, Ian, I mentioned the payoff. So, of course, Peter Mandelson was sacked, and that is mentioned a lot in the documents. But it also transpired in these documents that he got a £75,000 payout, yes, but that was negotiated down from over £500,000 that Peter Mandelson initially asked for.
Because he wanted his contract, which ran till 2029, paid up in full, which is to be fair to him, that is a natural sort of opening gambit if you're in that situation where you've been sacked almost entirely, doesn't matter what the reason is, you've been sacked and therefore you can demand to be paid up in full. But the government didn't accede to that. The
government didn't do that, no, and they described it as good value for money that they negotiated that down to £75,000, paying off Peter Mandelson and Darren Jones, who's the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, talking to the Commons about that and basically saying, in an ideal world, we wouldn't have given him any money.
And the Lib Dems are saying that Mandelson should be forced to donate that money to good causes in some way. I don't quite know how they think he could be forced to, but there we go.
Well, that was Ed Davey. He was speaking in the House of Commons earlier today, and he basically said he should donate that money to charity to potentially Jeffrey Epstein's victims.
And what don't we know? I mean, that sounds an odd question to ask, but there was quite a few redactions in these papers because the Metropolitan Police wanted the government to redact some things. I mean, obviously, we don't know exactly what they were, but there'll be a lot of people sort of thinking, well, this is all a bit suspicious if we don't know everything.
Well, I think it is worth noting, again, this is the first tranche of these documents. So there's massive bits of information missing. For example, that document that we know exists over those three questions that Starmer famously asked Peter Mandelson before appointing him to the role, one of them being about whether or not he did stay at Jeffrey Epstein's house. In that document, I said it was reportedly. So that document, it seems, isn't being released until the Metropolitan Police, say that it can be released. And then there's all the text messages, the WhatsApp messages between cabinet ministers and Peter Mandelson too. So I think there is much more to come out. I think this is, apart from that one document I mentioned, those three questions, I think this is most of what we will get in relation to his appointment and the decisions around that. But I think there will be much more to come. Some people I've spoken to in Number 10 suggest maybe 3 tranches to come, 2 tranches to come. Other people suggest they will try and get everything else out in just one more.
Aggie, thank you very much indeed. That's Aggie Chambray, our Deputy Political Editor. Joe Twyman joins me now, co-founder and director of the polling company Delta Poll. Joe, very good evening to you. How have Keir Starmer's personal ratings changed over the last few weeks? Because after Christmas, they were at rock bottom. He was on, minus 62 points. And that's the worst rating of any Prime Minister in history at this stage of a parliament. But it seems as though he's recovered a bit.
Good evening, Ian. Yes, there has been a slight improvement, but the overall story is that it's still extremely bad news for Keir Starmer. His ratings are still very, very low. He has an overwhelming majority of people believing that he's doing a bad job, and there are consistent calls for him to resign, etc., and that's very clear in the data. And the question is, how will things move longer term, not just over the next few weeks and months with Iran, but until the next election? Because if he's unable to recover what is, as you say, a historically low position, it's difficult to see how Labour does win or even get close to winning at the next election.
How important does the electorate think judgment is in these situations? Because it seems, Labour, I think, is up 4 points in a recent poll. How much of that would be down to the decisions that Keir Starmer himself has made over the war in Iran and the fact that the electorate think, well, he made the right judgment call there?
Well, there's two different things going on there. The first is that for most subjects, the general public isn't paying too much attention to the specifics, and an individual event is unlikely to have a lasting impact. And so in 3 years' time, for instance, there are going to be relatively few people who go into the polling booth and think, I'm not going to vote for Labour because of the way that Keir Starmer handled the situation with Peter Mandelson. Instead, it's the cumulative effect that these events have. One after another, they start to question, they start to build narratives, stories that we tell ourselves and each other in the minds of voters about not just judgment, but who they can trust, who they think is right for people like them, who's making the best decisions for the country. And those broad narratives, whether it's judgment, trust, or otherwise, are what are hugely important when it comes to voting. The exception to that could be the war in Iran, because as we have seen in the past, wars can make an impact on a leader in a way that other subjects really don't. Now, it's more complicated than that, and the economy will also play a part. But if Keir Starmer is seen to be on the right side of history, then it will be of benefit to him, and the opposite is true if he's to be on the wrong side of history. But the danger he has at the moment is we don't know whether he is on the right or the wrong side of history yet. And the polling around the war, all the polling around the war at the moment, is largely irrelevant, because we have seen in the past that something like the Iraq War, for instance, can be popular at the beginning, despite the fact that people forget that, and then become very unpopular. And then you can have other incidents such as the war in Libya that starts off very unpopular but becomes very popular. And the circumstances change based on what happens on the ground. And that is almost completely outside the control of Keir Starmer.
So would you agree with me if I said that voters really do care about whether politicians make the right decisions, make the right judgment calls on big ticket issues like going to war? And in effect, the sort of Peter Mandelson saga is something that might interest you and me and people in Westminster. But even if the Prime Minister has made the wrong judgment call over Peter Mandelson, that's not necessarily going to shift the dial.
Yes, I would say that that's almost certainly going to be the case. But ultimately, none of this may matter if the economy improves significantly or if the economy deteriorates significantly. Tony Blair's position on Iraq was very unpopular, but the economy was doing well, and so elections were won even after entering the Iraq War. But I think that the most likely outcome is that the situation with Peter Mandelson is a talking point, but the war in Iran could, and I do stress could, be a turning point.
Oh, did you just make that up, Joe, or was that a soundbite you prepared earlier?
It's almost as if I do this for a job.
Well, it's a very good one. I might purloin that myself. Thank you very much indeed. That's Joe Twyman from Delta Poll. I think that is an interesting piece of analysis, actually, because I think there is a lot in that to say that, well, look, I mean, we are in early days in this conflict. It's only, 11 days since the first bombs dropped over Iran. Remember, when the Iraq War started in March 2003, the poll showed that the British public in general really approved of it. Now, those polls changed over time. Have you changed your mind over Keir Starmer's judgment? 0345 6060 973. Now, we should, of course, point out that Peter Mandelson denies any allegations of wrongdoing. So we'll come to your calls in a moment. Really interested to hear what you think about this, as to whether you think that Keir Starmer's judgment was right on Iran. And does that really trump everything? That you can disagree with some of his judgment calls on the economy, for example, or on appointing Peter Mandelson. But in the end, nothing matters more than making the right judgment call over matters of national security like Iran. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 18 minutes past 7.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
This is taxation without representation.
Straight to the point.
Do you get giddy with all these U-turns?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Lucky he gets up in the morning, really, isn't it?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A a bit less.
Come on!
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Whether you still own it or not, if you had a diesel car built between 2009 and 2020, you could be entitled to compensation. Checking takes minutes at jointheclaim.com, and if successful, compensation could be worth thousands. Diesel emissions claims are still open for Ford, Nissan, Renault, Mercedes, BMW and Jaguar Land Rover. Don't miss out. Join millions of drivers across the UK. Check your vehicle now at jointheclaim.com.
Join the claim!
We asked patients at Great Ormond Street Hospital what makes someone special.
They can make me laugh lots and lots and lots and lots. They have to write arts and crafts. Their favourite food is chocolate cake. They might be a magician, so they can magically make me better. They will be kind.
Does that sound like you? Be someone special and leave a gift in your will to Gosh Charity. Search Gosh Legacy for your Gifts in Wills guide.
Thank you.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 20 past 7 on LBC. We're asking you about Keir Starmer's judgment. Do you think he made the right judgment call initially on Iran to keep Britain out of the conflict as much as possible, even though 2 days later he had to do a sort of, I'm not sure I would describe it as a U-turn, a little bit of a reverse ferret maybe, where he allowed American planes to use British air bases, something on the 2 days before that he had vowed not to do. And that was effectively because the Iranians had attacked British interests in the Gulf. Was that the right judgment call? I mean, you do have to react to events as a Prime Minister, certainly in domestic politics and indeed in foreign affairs. Did he make the right judgment call on that? Has your opinion of Keir Starmer's judgment improved over the last 11 days or so? Well, at lunchtime today, before these Peter Mandelson documents were released, a very triumphant Sir Keir Starmer used this week's Prime Minister's questions to claim that Tory leader Kemi Badenoch would have responded rather differently to the war in Iran than he did.
Mr. Speaker, as I said to the House last week, I took the decision that we should not join the initial US-Israeli offensive against Iran. The leader of the opposition attacked me for that decision relentlessly. She said that the UK should have joined the US and Israel in the initial offensive strikes. Mr. Speaker, then yesterday, in the wake of the economic consequences, the leader of the opposition totally abandoned her position. She told the BBC, "I never said we should join." She told the BBC, "I haven't said we should have gone in with the United States." That is the mother of all U-turns on the single most important decision a Prime Minister ever has to take, whether to commit the United Kingdom to war or not.
Now, the thing is, I would like anybody who's listening now to send me evidence that Kemi Badenoch ever said what Keir Starmer alleged that she had. But the bizarre thing was that she didn't respond to that. I was expecting her to come back and say, well, she can't say that's a lie because the Speaker would have ruled it out of order. But her position from the start was that we should have let the Americans use our bases. And she was very critical of the Prime Minister for not doing that. I don't recall any instance of her ever saying we should have joined with America and the Israelis and bombed Iran. Now, Nigel Farage did say that. He's the one that's actually done a real U-turn here because he's now saying, no, we can't get involved in foreign wars. And Zia Youssef and Richard Tice and Robert Jenrick have all said very different things. There has been no uniform message from Reform UK on this. So I think you can question Nigel Farage's judgment here. You can criticise Kemi Badenoch for maybe some of the language that she's used here. But as far as I know, and feel free to prove me wrong, she never said that Britain should go in with the Americans and the Iranians. And yet she didn't come back all guns blazing, saying to Keir Starmer, no, you are wrong. Now, I would say that's a misjudgment on her part, because she spent all of the 6 questions talking about the fuel duty, which is important. It's not quite on the scale of going to war, though, is it? Should she have reacted rather differently? Did that show a lack of judgment on her part? And I've got a text here from this is from Jeff in St Albans saying, Iain, you neatly avoided Kemi's disastrous PMQs today. A total shambles. She can only stick to 6 scripted questions and can't adapt when she doesn't get the answer she wants. Well, I haven't neatly avoided it because I've just been talking about it. I'll be quite honest. I think that was her worst Prime Minister's Questions performance of this year. I don't think she got it right. I think she did stick to the script too much. I think she should have gone for Keir Starmer saying, don't you lie about me, or words to that effect. Wesley says, good evening, Iain. I think that Starmer's prudent approach with the Iranian-US involvement stems from his decision with Mandelson. He probably weighed up PM's appointment with what Trump might want with an ambassador and went ahead with it, although it was a reputational risk. He has thus burned himself and has been more prudent with the war. Just my take on the issue. Well, your take is always very welcome, Wesley. By the way, I must apologise if I'm sounding a little bit hesitant when I read stuff this evening. It's because I've been to the eye hospital today and I've got to have more laser treatment. So I had these eye drops which make my eyes very misty. So everything's having to be printed off for me and I haven't got the right glasses. So apologies for that if during the course of the programme I'm not reading in my normal eloquent manner. Right, let's go to your calls. Steve is in Chelmsford. Steve, very good evening. What would you like to tell us?
Hi, good evening, Iain. I'd just like to say I don't quite understand why Starmer was showboating so much in PMQs today, because he's got nothing to showboat about. He talked about, he decided not to take us to war. He was never asked by America to join them and go to war. Do we know that for a fact? Well, he wouldn't even give them access to the air bases. So I think the main thing is that was the decision that he made, not to give them access to Fairford and Diego Garcia in the Chagos Islands. He didn't. I'm fairly certain that would have been more than adequate for Trump and the United States. And that was my. You're right, and that was my criticism of Starmer right from the beginning. That I thought that was a major diplomatic mistake and did show a lack of judgment. And I still stand by that, even though I think I'm a little bit of a lone voice on this now. Well, and this is it. I think it's just kind of snowballed into. Or him making out as if he made a decision on war. And that came across in PMQs today, and he definitely didn't. And I don't quite understand why Kemi Badenoch didn't call him out, to be honest, because that was as far as I'm aware, that was the only decision that he had to make, and he didn't make it. And to be honest, I couldn't understand why he didn't give them access, because there's other air bases in the UK that were bringing in plenty of hardware and fighter bombers that were stopping over at the bases and then going back out to the Middle East. So what's the difference between that and giving access to Fairford? Because that's in the UK as well.
Well, Fairford is the base that, because it's got a very long runway, they can take these massive planes in the way that I think the likes of Mildenhall and Lakenheath probably can't. I think that was the reason. So effectively, the planes stop off at Fairford, refuel, and then go off to Iran. So I think they're different from other air bases.
Well, the jets that come into Lakenheath, they are actually fighter bombers. So they can drop bombs as well as do the other things that the fast jets can do. So I really don't understand how this all got completely out of hand. But what it's ended up as is us just looking ridiculous. And then on top of that, if you add HMS Dragon onto what's happened as well, Now, you didn't have to be like a rocket scientist to realise that when Trump decided to bring a second carrier fleet into that area, that it was more than a bluff. Potentially, he might have run it as a bluff with one carrier fleet, but when he decided to take another carrier fleet there, odds on was that he was going to attack Iran. And at that point, they should have prepared HMS Dragon to go.
Totally agree.
Rather than that completely farcical situation that occurred that's made us look so weak and embarrassing. And it makes me even more angry that he was showboating like that at Parliament today, when he's got no cause to showboat and almost make out as if he's some great leader that had to make a decision. Well, as far as I'm aware, the only decision he had to make was giving them permission for Fairford and Diego Garcia, and he couldn't even manage that. And now all of a sudden it's spun round to make out as if he's some great war leader, and everyone's getting suckered into it. And I just don't understand it.
Well, Steve, we obviously have very similar brains, because I agree with every single word you've said there. I think it was a sign of weakness. I don't think it was the right judgment call. I think that is proved by the reaction of many of our allies to this. They think, well, where is Britain? And when you see the reaction of the French government compared to the reaction of our government, it's embarrassing. That's what I think. I know many of you disagree with me, and you have every right to. We can disagree politely, but I think this was not the right decision for Britain. Ian has texted in to say, Ian, you've been on the wrong side of history for every event that's happened in your adult life. That's quite a claim, because you don't actually give any examples of what you mean by that. Anyway, he continues, and yet you haven't learned, grown, or even self-reflected on the fact. You are like a barometer on what is a bad decision of the day. I'm presuming you're talking about Brexit on that. And look, I mean, again, people can have different views on that. I have no regrets on that whatsoever. And I'm sure there are other judgment calls that I've made which have been wrong. But there have been plenty, I think I could quote you if I thought hard enough, where I've actually been right. Actually, I will quote you one, because we were talking about this in the office earlier. Who was it on the British media who started covering Iran right back in December over Christmas when the protests were starting? I was doing phone-ins every day over the between sort of just as before the New Year and after the New Year, in a way that nobody else on the British media was. I identified this as something which I thought was going to have major consequences. And I think I did make the right judgment call on that, unlike many other people in the media. So take that for one example, Ian. 0345 6060 Has your opinion of Keir Starmer's judgment been changed by his decisions on the war in Iran, or indeed his decisions on appointing Peter Mandelson? We've been hearing about those from Aggie today. It's 7:32 on LBC. Let's get the news headlines with Amelia Cox.
The Prime Minister was warned of the reputational risk Lord Mandelson posed when he was appointed US ambassador. Files released by Downing Street also reveal he asked for £500,000 as a severance payout when he was sacked last year. 32 countries, including the UK, have agreed to release 400 million barrels of oil from emergency reserves. It's hoped it will help to steady prices, with Iran warning they could reach $200 a barrel as it continues to block the Strait of Hormuz. And an inmate has appeared in court charged with the murder of Ian Huntley. 43-year-old Anthony Russell is accused of attacking the Soham killer at HMP Frankland in County Durham. LBC weather, a windy night, especially in the north and west. Heavy rain for the north of Scotland and Northern Ireland. The odd shower elsewhere, a low of 3 degrees.
Hear every side of the story. LBC.
With over 50 years' experience, Fidelity can help you feel confidently invested. Make the most of your annual allowances by the 5th of April with our expert insights, excellent service, and wealth of investment options. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
At Amazon, over 50% of deliveries now come with less packaging, or with no added packaging at all. It's a difference you'll notice on your doorstep, where you chat with friends, where your neighbour's daughter practices guitar, and where we deliver your new noise-cancelling headphones in the manufacturer's packaging. Ah, much better. Reduced packaging from Amazon. We're delivering change where it matters, on your doorstep. Based on 2025 Amazon packaging data across the UK and EU.
If you were missold a home on a holiday park, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive compensation. Text ADVICE to 78900.
A message from TfL.
I saw him in the local news a few days after. His name's Rakesh. They had to put him into a coma just because I didn't look again at that turning. He had 2 kids. How did I not see his bike ahead of me? Well, I didn't look again. He didn't make it.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:34. I think another judgment call I and my team got right was yesterday, talking about the possibility of the Home Secretary banning the Al-Quds March, which was due to take place on Sunday this weekend. We spent a whole hour talking about it last night, and I think we were the first on the media to do that. And hey presto, 2 hours after we came off air, the Home Secretary announced that was exactly what she was doing. Well, did she make the right decision? Let's talk to Vahid Beheshti, who is founder of the Iran Front, who's been leading a sit-in protest outside the Foreign Office since February 2023 to demand that the UK prescribes the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terror group. Vahid, thank you very much for joining us. And first of all, can I just sort of say I was reading about you the other day, and I thought, what a brave person you are to do this and to do it for so long. And I too don't understand why the IRGC haven't been, well, I know what the government's explanation for it is, but why they haven't been banned. Now, I assume you welcome the fact that this march has been banned.
Yes, thank you, Ian, for having me on your show again. That's the right decision by our government, but very late. I'm going to go even further, Ian. So I think we should never allow this march to take place from the very beginning. 14 years ago. Why? I give you my reason. So first we have to see what is Al-Quds Day, why has been established, who founded, and what is the aim and the goal and the demand of this march. So Al-Quds Day is the last Friday of the month of Ramadan. So 47 years ago, we didn't have any day named Al-Quds Day. Al-Quds Day founded by the founder of this evil mullah's regime in Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini, in the very beginning, in 1979. So he named the last Friday of the month of Ramadan Al-Quds Day with this aim to mobilize the Muslims community, regardless of Sunni or Shia or whatever, against the state of Israel, against Jewish people, with one ultimate demand, one final demand. What is it? Elimination of the state of Israel and Jewish people. So in that case, we can name the Al-Quds Day the International Day of Anti-Semitism. This is it. So when the core of this day, when the main reason of this day is a base of anti-Semitism, we should never have allowed this march to take place from the very beginning. That was the fatal mistake which we made 14 years ago. I don't know why our intelligence service didn't do their homework, didn't do their research, and they just accepted the reason that it was given to them for this rally, for this march. This is not the freedom of speech. When you are mobilizing one community against another nation, actually in order to eliminate that nation. This is not the freedom of speech, but we allowed this for 14 years in our country to take place. Now we made the right decision, thank God. Now, but what is the next step? As you started with this, prescription of IRGC before the regime collapse. I don't know how our government, our decision makers are going to look at the Iranians into the eye if the regime collapses and we haven't prescribed IRGC yet? How we are going to reestablish our relationship, especially our economic and political relationship with the new system in Iran. Because now, when we need to stand by Iranians, we stand by on the fence, and sitting on the fence means we're standing by regime.
Well, the government and the previous government took the same stance as this government. They say that they can't prescribe it because it is part of the Iranian state. Therefore, they can't prescribe it as a terror organisation. Now, I think they could easily do that. All they need to do is either change the law or the regulation that they say prevents them from doing that. If you want to do something, you can do it. And yet the European Union have done it, and yet our government seems still reluctant to do it.
So they need, as you explained, as you describe it very well, they need a law, they need a legislation, and they are on that path, as they stated, but they only need to fast forward the process. That's all they need to do, especially at this very critical situation. But they haven't decided. I encourage them. I have no hope on this government. Let me be clear, but I still encourage them to do this, because this is very essential for the establishment of our new relationship, especially political and economic relationship with this wealthy country. Iran is the 5th richest country in the world, and the regime is collapsing. The regime's days are numbered.
Is it though?
We all know.
I mean, what is the evidence for it collapsing? Because I don't see that at the moment.
No, because maybe but we as the people who this is our life. We saw this regime for years now. This is the weakest point of the regime that they experienced it themselves. Look what they've done. Their entire navy has been destroyed completely. Their entire air force has been destroyed completely. The country's skies are completely under the control of Israelis and Americans' air force. They lost all their top commanders. They lost their leaders, the supreme leaders, the source of inspiration and the charismatic leaders. And the new supreme leader, Iain, we are not still sure if he's still alive or not. We had some news he's in coma or whatever. And then all the centers of repression, police station, Basij centers, military bases of the IRGC are being destroyed one by one, city by city. So last week, I was in one panel with Yair Lapid, the head of the opposition in Israel. He described 3 goals of this war. He says, first, destabilizing the nuclear capability of the regime. He said, second, destabilizing the missiles capability of the regime. The third, creating a condition for Iranian people to take to the street and put an end to this regime and create a new secular democratic system based on human rights and law.
But the problem there is, who decides when they say to the Iranian people, now is the time to rise up? And what guarantee is there that they would do that at that point?
Look, what at the moment I will describe the reality for what it is, not for what I like to see. This war has only one main commander at the moment who is running this war, who has the vision, who has of this war, which is President Donald Trump. So from the day one, he said, stay at home, Iranian people, and Iranian people loved him. You saw they renamed the streets with his name, they chanting his name, they hung in banners from different streets and thanking him. He said to Iranian people, stay at home until we finished, and then we are going to tell you to come back to the street and finish the job yourself. This is what we are experiencing at this moment. And as I understand, Iranian people are listening to Donald Trump. Let me just express the feeling of Iranian at this moment, which I am talking to you. So it's very strange, but that's a reality. The only concern that the Iranian people have now they become really worried and anxious when the sounds of explosions decreases, when the sounds of explosions stop. They are really fearful of that. Israel and America might leave this job unfinished. It's not going to happen. They've been through a lot. I think by now, Israel and America, we all know, a lot of pressure on them, the price of oil price, the market, the stock market. But they are not going to, I think, leave the job at this moment. Because why? Because if the new supreme leader is alive, he's more brutal, he's more radical of his death. Mujtaba Khamenei, he's the very brutal and radical face of the regime who lost his dad, his mom, his wife, and the entire family in the first minute of this operation. So that's a big humiliation for him. What he see is revenge. He only see blood. So this current regime is more radical and more brutal. So they are not good. By any logic, they are not going to leave the regime as it is. They are going to weaken the regime until the Iranian people can take to the street again. Look, we showed it to the world how brave we are and how we are willing to sacrifice. Only 10 weeks ago, we lost tens of thousands of our great fellow compatriots who came to the street and sacrificed their lives. We got to do that. We have nothing to lose.
Okay.
This is the message of Iranians. So we are going to go all the way and finish this evil regime, and hopefully Iran becomes a great player and the source of inspiration for not only for the region, for the entire world, instead of become a hub of terrorism and this jihadi ideology.
I think they need to take a leaf out of your book, because I think you're a great inspiration, which is why I've spent twice as long talking to you as I was scheduled to do. And thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. And next time I'm wandering past the Foreign Office, I'm going to come and say hello. Thank you very much. That's Vahid Beheshti. He's the founder of Iran Front. He's been leading this sit-in protest outside the Foreign Office since February 2023. Right, we'll come back to your calls in a moment on Keir Starmer's judgment. What's your view? Has your view of his judgment changed over the course of the last 11 days? Or do you think, no, he keeps making the wrong judgment calls on the economy, on Peter Mandelson? But even if he's got it right on Iran, he's got it wrong too often. Is that your view? 7:46.
Hey, smart speaker. Play LBC.
Good morning, I'm Nick Ferrari. It's time to get to your calls.
First-time caller, a little bit nervous.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for taking my call.
They have no Navy, they have no Air Force, and they have no leadership. We could call it a tremendous success right now, or we could go further, and we're going to go further.
Hear every side of the story.
Why do people think that Trump wants to bring democracy to Iranians while he's dismantling democracy in his own country?
There is a general feeling within our government that defence is something that we have to vastly up because of what's happening in the world, and they will find a way of doing it.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me. Coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on. Sorry.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
If you were missold a home on a holiday park, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive compensation. Text ADVICE to 78900.
Get 3 months half price when you switch to an unlimited SIM with 3. That means quick streaming, faster downloads, and more money to spend on the things you love. Join the UK's fastest 5G network and get your unlimited SIM today. Buy now in store or c3.co.uk.
Unlimited 24-month light plan. Proof of switching required. Based on Ookla speed test intelligence data 2H 2025. All rights reserved. Subject to credit checks and terms.
With over 50 years' experience, at Fidelity, we believe there's a difference between investing and being invested. Investing is having access to guidance, tools, and expert insights. Being invested means feeling confident about your future. Investing is choosing from a wealth of investment options. Being invested means focusing on your long-term goals. For ISAs, pensions or advice, be truly invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to skip traffic and glide to wherever you need to be, with headspace to focus on more important matters, like if that cloud is a starfish or sunflower. Fast journeys without the rush with great deals at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
7:49. Let me tell you who's on Cross Question tonight. We have Barry Gardiner, Labour MP for Brent West, who I think I'm right in saying has appeared more often than on Cross Question than anybody else. Sir Alex Shelbrooke, Conservative MP for Wetherby and Easingwold. He's also the Vice President of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. Lucy Reid is a columnist for The New World. And Tony Earnshaw is founder and Chief Executive of the UK commercial group, a cleaning and facilities management company. They'll all be here taking your calls, answering your questions at 8. Right, talking of calls, let's go to Chris in Richmond. Hello, Chris.
Hello, evening, Ian. And so on Keir Starmer, clearly, mixed picture. I think on Iran, he's got it right. I'll come back to that in a minute. On the economy, it's not been great management, and I think we've really exposed ourselves to rising oil and gas prices. And the Peter Mandelson thing was the less said the better, really. But it's no defence for what he did, and the lack of due diligence and just not really thinking it through. Right. But in terms of what you said about Kemi earlier on, I think Kemi herself has been quite disingenuous. But let's go back to what she's actually said on several interviews. We shouldn't be catching there. We're catching narrows. We're not stopping the archer. Sometimes
why is that wrong, though? I don't understand. I mean, she never advocated bombing Iran with Israel and America. Are we agreed on that?
Come on, Ian. You're being a little bit cute in language. How are you going to... And the other thing she said is sometimes you have to make sure that you get there first to stop their ability to hurt you. How on earth are you going to do that without bombing these sites? Well, come on, I'm not military expert.
No. I think what she was saying, when it became clear that Iran was launching attacks against British interests, I mean, the Akrotiri drone incident, that apparently came from Hezbollah in Lebanon rather than directly from Iran, but we know that Hezbollah is effectively a client of the Iranian state, and all of the different attacks in the Gulf. I think what she meant was, well, we need now to take positive action and try and stop these attacks at source. I.e., yes, we should be trying to bomb Iranian missile sites and missile launchers. Why wouldn't we do that?
But then she's now, apparently yesterday, she was saying she wasn't claiming we should be involved. I mean, I think she's being a little bit cute in her use.
Well, no, I think there is a big difference between saying that Britain should have been at the forefront of the initial bombing attacks with Israel and America, and saying then, well, now that they've attacked us, we need to go for them ourselves. It's a very different thing.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure I fully agree. I mean, at the end of the day, the strategy of the US is catastrophic. There is no clear plan. There's no clear ending. And yes, you want to oppose it.
Well, again, I don't think you're right on that. I think the plan. You might say there's no clear plan for what happens afterwards, and there I might agree with you. But I think it is very clear what they're intending to do. They are trying to destroy Iranians' military, and I think they've by and large already done that. They're trying to destroy any remnants of the Iranian nuclear program. I've got no idea whether they've succeeded in that yet.
Hang on a minute. We were told 2 years ago. We were told less than a year ago that they destroyed it. That there was no coming back from it. So, I mean, the Trump administration has been completely disingenuous. What was the 12-day war in June 2025 all about then? Wasn't that about taking out their nuclear capability?
I agree. I thought that I agree with you there. I thought that they had destroyed it. Well, clearly they've got evidence that they didn't.
Yeah, no, but I guess the point is, right, are we not back to where we were in 2003, clear and present danger? There was no evidence to say that Iran was... Yes, I understand what's going on with the Houthis. I understand what about Hezbollah. I completely agree. But the reality is, in terms of the nuclear piece, there is no evidence that they were literally a clear and present danger. There is no evidence of that.
Well, they certainly won't be now. Chris, thank you very much. Let's go to Saeed in Watford. Good evening, Saeed. What would you like to tell us?
Good evening. So, thank you for having me here. Sorry, my language is not very good, but I try to.
Sounds excellent to me.
Okay. So I heard something. You asked your person before me. So he said there is no any clear roadmap on the U.S. and Israel when they attack to the Islamic Republic. Definitely, there is a roadmap. The target is destroying, overthrowing, and failing the Islamic Republic in Iran because they are terrorists. They are supporting Hamas, Houthi, and Hezbollah. So nobody in the world need those because they are supporting the terrorists. So I got received messages from Iran. So let me say, so I lost my cousin and my brother and my niece. They got shot, unfortunately, by the IRGC.
What, in the protests in January?
Yeah, on 8th of January, my brother, my cousin, his name is Suhail. He was 17 years old. He was a barber. He just went out to say, I needed freedom. I needed a very normal life. But IRGC shot him and he died, unfortunately. Okay, I got received a message from my mom from inside of Iran. It is very important. She said, I'm not afraid from bombing and war. I'm afraid to Islamic regime remaining in the power because every day in the TV the regime threatening ordinary civilians. They say once this war is over, we will deal with you. Do you know what this means? Every day threatening. It's very difficult. I don't know, people. What do you think about this war? But imagine in 2 days, IRGC killed about 40,000, at least 36,000 innocent Iranian. But after 10 days, with the 5,000 targets with the Israeli and American, just about 2,000 IRGC troops gone and less than 200 civilians died. I don't know how they killed Iranian people just in 2 days, thousands of the thousand.
Can I ask you a question? You will have heard the interview I just did with Vahid Beheshti, where he was saying that once the military action stops, once the bombing stops, that is when Iranians will come back out on the streets and overthrow the regime. Do you have confidence that that will actually happen?
So I confidently receive 100 messages from inside of the Iran. They are waiting for calling Crown Princess of Pahlavi, Donald Trump, and Bibi Netanyahu. Do you know why? Because they think the IRGC right now, the bases is gone, and from the military, air military support, like drones, can support the Iranian, and the Iranian people can invade it and control all the government places. The other reason is, do you know who demand for justice? Iranian people. We demand for international community. We said, Bibi Netanyahu, Donald Trump, please help us, because there is no any other way to overthrow the Islamic Republic in Iran. Do you think there was any other way? Maybe you said negotiation. But 47 years, there was under the negotiation. Every day, single day, they lying, bluffing, and finally, you see, we are in the middle of the war.
Well, I hope what you say is true. I mean, I just wonder whether there might be some reluctance after 40,000 people were killed by the IRGC. I mean, obviously, there will be people who are maybe more reluctant to come out on the street, because so far the IRGC has not been destroyed. I don't think I assume that some of their headquarters have been attacked by the Israeli and American bombs, but they still seem to be holding quite a lot of power and influence.
In some way, you are right. And they're hiding in the hospital, they're hiding in the shrine, in holy places, under the ground bunkers. But so there is one way, I think. After 5,000, 10,000 bombing places in Iran, just Iranian people is the way, the unique way. Just by the air support, Iranian people can overthrow the Islamic Republic, and they can destroy them forever. And the wars get released. This is my idea, because my family living there, my brother and my sister, my cousin, niece, everyone waiting for end of this war and waiting for calling Crown Princess of Pahlavi, because they trust him, and most of the people in Iran trust him. So I heard something in the news press. They said, what happened for future of the Iran? Maybe future of Iran look like Afghanistan, Syria, or Iraq. So definitely it's not like that, because for three reasons we will not be like Afghanistan, Iraq, or Syria. First of all, we have an opposition leader. Second, we have a roadmap. Third, we have a civilization. The ideology is not important for Iranian people. Iran as a country is important. So we will not be like a future of the Afghanistan, Iraq, or Syria.
Saeed, you've been absolutely brilliant. You should have no qualms about your language. It's absolutely superb. Thank you for phoning in. And I'd really like you, when we talk about Iran over the next I suspect it's going to be more than the next couple of weeks, I really want to hear from you again, because you've given us some first-hand knowledge of what is going on there and what you think might happen in the future. And we're very, very grateful to you. Thank you very much. Right, coming up on Cross Question, your questions to our panel, which includes Barry Gardner, the Labour MP for Brent West, Sir Alex Shelbrooke, Conservative MP for Wetherby and Easingwold, Lucy Reid, a columnist for The New World, and Tony Earnshaw, entrepreneur and businessman. They'll be here to answer your calls. The number to call 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that number. You can text on 84850, and you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel. All coming up in just a few moments' time here on LBC.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the government says Lord Mandelson should never have represented the UK. Files have been released about his appointment as US ambassador, which shows the Prime Minister was warned there was a reputational risk. It's also emerged he asked for a severance payment of £500,000 when he was sacked over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein last year. Editor of the Democracy for Sale Substack, Peter Gagan, has told LBC it's shocking.
It's incredible, and he ends up having basically, he's able to kind of bargain up to £74,000. That's about twice the average median salary, the median salary in the UK. That is a lot of money.
Mandelson denies any wrongdoing. The Prime Minister insists plans to put up fuel duty are under review as Iran warns the cost of a barrel of oil could rise to $200. Kemi Badenoch has criticised Sir Keir Starmer for pushing ahead with plans to end a tax freeze in September. But he hit back at the Tory leader, accusing her of changing her position on the conflict.
After 9 days of saying, join the war, join the war, join the war, yesterday she says, I never said we should join. I haven't said we should go in with the US. I'll tell you what's happened, Mr. Speaker. She and the Reform leader have been spooked because they realise they've jumped into supporting a war without thinking through the consequences.
32 countries, including the UK, have agreed to release oil reserves to help steady prices. Hundreds of mortgage deals have also been pulled from the market. Another sign the conflict is having an impact on the cost of living. A 15-year-old boy has been arrested after a teenage girl was stabbed at a secondary school in Norfolk. The victim was taken to hospital with minor injuries after the incident at Thorpe St Andrews School near Norwich. An inmate has appeared in court charged with the murder of Soham killer Ian Huntley. 43-year-old Anthony Russell is due to appear at Newcastle Crown Court tomorrow. Huntley, who was 52, died on Friday after being attacked at HMP Frankland near Durham. And some low-level train services at Glasgow Central have resumed after a fire devastated a nearby building, but the high-level station will remain shut for the rest of the week. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 58 points at 10,353. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather, a windy night, especially in the north and west. Heavy rain for the north of Scotland and Northern Ireland. The odd shower elsewhere. A low of 3. Windy tomorrow with outbreaks of heavy blustery rain moving southwards. Drier but dull in southern England. A high of 14 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daisy Steele.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8:03 on LBC. I'm Iain Dale. Welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. On my panel tonight, we have two debutants. To my left, the first one, Tony Earnshaw, is founder and chief executive of UK Commercial Group, a cleaning and facilities management company. Next to him is Sir Alex Shelbrooke, Conservative MP for Wetherby and Easingwold, who's also the vice president of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. To my right is Lucy Reid, a columnist for The New World. She's actually appeared on the programme before. I wonder if anybody listening can identify when that was. Text me on 84850. You won't win a prize because we don't do prizes. But we have drawn first prize in the Lottery of Life by having I'm sounding like Giles Brandreth, aren't I? By having Barry Gardner, Labour MP for Brent West, on the panel tonight. They're here to take your calls, your questions on 0345 6060 973. And if you've never watched us before, you might want to switch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app. This is LBC.
Right, let's go to our first question. It's on WhatsApp from Catherine, who says, will not taking us into an aimless and illegal war be Keir Starmer's key act and legacy as Prime Minister? So will not taking us into an aimless and illegal war be Keir Starmer's key act and legacy as Prime Minister? Barry Gardner.
Well, look, you will know, Iain, that I've had my own criticisms
you have indeed
of the way in which Sir Keir has led our party. But on this, I think he got it absolutely right. I said at the time of the statement that I was there when we took the decision on Iraq, and we needed no persuasion that Saddam Hussein was a bad and evil man. What we did need to be assured of was that there was a legal basis for the conflict and that it had a clear exit strategy, and it had neither. Neither did this war. And I think we're seeing the repercussions.
Did you vote for the war in Iraq?
I did. It was a mistake which I made, and I hope I've learned from, and I hope the Labour Party has learned from. And I think that the way in which Sir Keir has handled this was really important. On this issue of legacy that Catherine asked, if you look back, and you will remember the days of Harold Wilson, and I think
only vaguely.
Oh, go on. But you
hang on. I was 13 when he left office. Thank you.
As I say, you had a functioning memory then. But what I wanted to point out was the things that we remember him for were, one, the creation of the Open University, and two, the fact that he kept Britain out of the Vietnam War. It was a very substantial legacy. And I think, Keir has done well in judging what is a very difficult tightrope to walk internationally in terms of global geopolitics.
Alex Shelbrooke, I suspect you might disagree with that.
Well, I think we're getting slightly confused in our definitions. What are we describing as a war? The conversation, the answer Barry just said, has gone immediately back to the Iraq conflict, which was a very different situation indeed. And the questions around the legality of that war have gone on for years, with one side and another. I don't personally cast comment on that. This is an Israeli-American-led war. We have not been asked to take part in it in the way that we were with the Iraq War, and neither have any other countries. What was asked was whether we could use, whether the Americans could use Diego Garcia and whether they could use the air bases. And I think it was a mistake to say no to that, because the Prime Minister is constantly talking about de-escalation. Who's listening? You know, who in the White House is now listening, having been told that you can't use the facilities that were there, which we had an agreement you would be used? So going into a war, what does that sound like to people? How are people interpreting that? Are they interpreting that we take part in the actual preemptive action going in the first wave? We weren't asked to do that. Are we people thinking we're going to put troops on the ground like we did in Iraq? That's not this war. Should we be protecting the British sovereign bases that are fired upon? Yes. Yes, we should.
Well, that's what Keir Starmer has said.
That is a very different place. But he hasn't done that. He's not saying that. You know, we've made it crystal clear. I actually really liked Kemi's line last week about don't try and catch the arrow, take out the archer. But that's a very different operation to saying you're going into the war and taking part in this war with America and Israel. And I am not clear of the objectives that the White House have on this conflict, to be blunt. I'm really not clear. As this has gone on, I'm really struggling to see what it is trying to achieve. When Donald Trump said this week we've almost achieved our objectives. But
if you can't see what the objectives are, how can you be in support of what they're doing?
No, what I said was they asked to use access of the bases that we have an agreement for them to use, and we said, no, you can't, for whatever reasons that we've had different legal opinions on that as well. The problem with that is that you're not in the room influencing anything because the phone's getting put down. And we've had different readouts about what happened with the Prime Minister's conversation with the President. Pays your money, takes your choice. But, you know, undoubtedly, it's the easy answer in politics and in foreign affairs to say if we de-escalate the situation, things will improve. Well, yeah, quite. I mean, you know, where does that go? I mean, so how do we define the war, Iain? That's the question.
All right, Lucy Reid.
I have to agree with Barry, to be honest. And I also think that something that Starmer said today in PMQs about it is the single biggest decision a Prime Minister takes, whether to bring his country into a war, rang true. And I do think he did make Badenoch and Farage look silly in the fact
Tony Blair said exactly the same thing in 2003.
I suppose, but I still think the point stands that Badenoch and Farage 1 week ago were saying that we should have gone all in, back to Trump, that Starmer was pathetic for not hitching his horse to the US as well.
Badenoch, she didn't actually say that. She did not say that we should be with the Israelis and the Americans sort of launching the attacks. I mean, Keir Starmer alleged that's what she said today.
But she was critical of him.
If she was critical of him for not giving the Americans permission to use the bases that they have in this country.
But from Starmer's perspective, giving the Americans the bases at that point would have been more involved than he was willing to be at a war that he alleges was illegal at that point of the Strait. When he is allowing UK bases to be used now, shipping HMS Dragon out now, I mean, from his perspective, that's to say, well, we're protecting UK interests. Our bases are RAF bases. But I just agree with Barry in that, with Harold Wilson's legacy as well, not letting the UK get dragged into a foreign war that is hugely unpopular, not just in the UK, in the US as well. And that's where I do have to agree with you that I have no idea what Trump's objective here is as well. I don't think he does, to be honest. And I do think, one thing I will say, I do think Starmer could have made more of his sort of Hugh Grant in Love Actually moment in sort of standing up to Trump.
I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well make the most of it.
That's what I'm saying. I think it would have played well with the right sort of people, and Ed
Davey would have been delighted with it, wouldn't he?
Yes.
Right, Tony Earnshaw, what's your view?
I think that Keir Starmer will be remembered as the Prime Minister who let down America and who spoilt the special relationship between the UK and America. Again, it's in delay from him. We've sent HMS Dragon over there, which is at least 8 days late. By the time it gets there, the war actually could be over. I think yet again, it's weak politics from Keir. And I think, yes, we should have been involved from day one. The second some of our military bases were hit in another country, it's an attack on the UK as far as I'm concerned, and we should be defending that, and we should then be attacking if they are attacking us.
So do you think this all stems from that decision that he made not to allow the Americans to use Aria Fairford and Diego Garcia as well? And there's the long-term consequences of that are going to be quite massive, aren't they?
Yeah, they're going to be huge. America's our biggest ally, as we know, and we should be supporting them at all times. It doesn't have to be an offensive attacking situation. It could be defensive. And again, we were late to the party, dithering delay.
Barry, what do you think the long-term consequences of this are going to be with regard to the relationship between Britain and America? Because you rightly made the comparison with Harold Wilson. I mean, there were consequences to that. I think one of our listeners texted in the other day and said, of course, Lyndon Johnson, the then American president, wouldn't come on a state visit to the UK because of it. Now we've got the King going to America on a state visit, I think, in April. I mean, this is something that is going to reverberate down the years, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Look, but to pick up on what Tony was saying, I think actually the person who has spoiled the special relationship actually was Donald Trump, and I think he did it before the Iran war. I think he did it by just tearing up the international rules-based order, by imposing tariffs on allies as well as commercial enemies.
Well, some of them tariffs were reciprocal tariffs. At the end of the day, we were only given a 10% tariff in this country, probably the lowest tariff in the whole of the world, if not Europe, for definite.
Yeah, and that was the value of Keir Starmer going and actually presenting that letter about the invitation to the King and basically eating humble pie and pandering to Donald Trump's
narcissism.
Thank you.
Anytime.
But look, there is a huge shift in the global order at the moment. This is not just a small difference between the UK and the US. We're seeing a huge shift in the global order, and if you look at what's happened with not just Iran, but with the way in which America went in, took out Maduro, came to an agreement with Maduro's successor that the oil will now not be sold to Iran and to China as it was being. I mean, this is part of a much wider strategic play that America is coordinating. And the reason it's doing so, because if in the end they do get a compliant leadership in Iran, and if they were to get control of Greenland, as President Trump also wanted, they would have effective control of 40% of the world's oil. Now, the key thing here is not actually having the oil. It's making sure that the petrodollar is the international reserve currency, because that's what keeps American economy as high as it is. And the real fear that America had, both of Venezuela and of Iran, was that they were selling oil for rubles and renminbi. And of course, that was undermining the petrodollar's status as the reserve currency of the world. So there are huge shifts going on here, and it's power politics coming into play that says the international rules-based order, which said you don't just go in and take out a foreign president, has really been cast aside.
So they are a perspective about the oil situation. The reality was that you're almost back to Cuba 62 with Russia and Iran were getting a foothold in Venezuela, influencing that entire region. That moves beyond oil. And when I look at it from the geostrategic security point of view, the special relationship is not just about the people who are leading the countries. It's not about Donald Trump. It's not about Keir Starmer. It's about the military alliances that we have built during and since the Second World War.
100% agree.
And we are not seen, and take my word for this in the conversations I had, and I'm in Washington again next week, we are no longer seen as a reliable ally. And that is exceptionally worrying. And that's got nothing to do, Barry, that's got nothing to do with the White House and who's running it now. But it's that where there were agreements in place to use the bases, and we capitulated at that moment in time.
Let's talk about reliable allies. What reliable ally is it that says, I am prepared to attack a NATO ally.
Yeah, I agree, Barry.
Greenland.
Barry, I agree with all of that. But this is important.
But let me just make a point, because it is important.
Because I know where you're going to go. But this is what's important about this.
But the audience may not.
Let him make his point.
But Congress were not going to let that happen. That's when you work behind the scenes. This is bigger than the man behind the in the Oval Office. It's bigger than the Prime Minister. It's about the relationships that are in place.
But you say Congress would let it happen. They've let Iran happen.
Well, there's a difference, because the what's happened in Iran couldn't be used to be stopped in Congress in terms of NATO, you see. So in terms of breaking up the Washington Treaty and being able to effectively break that and invade, Congress would have a say on that. But the congressmen I speak to are crystal clear that that wasn't going to happen. But what's more important is that there are tens of thousands of American troops and equipment in Europe. And the situation in Europe is at its most deadly since the Second World War. Let's not talk about the Cold War, since the Second World War. And I don't understand what's going on in Iran. I don't. And maybe we'll find out what his intentions were later. I stopped understanding what was going on when about 48 hours ago he said, our objectives have almost been achieved. Well, I'm struggling to see, apart from smashing the place up, what they are.
Strangely, 20 minutes after he put the phone down to Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, and I mean, again, this is where you move it away from the man sat behind that desk to where are the strength of the strategic military alliances. And what worries me in all
this
is
the Commander-in-Chief, Alec. He's the Commander-in-Chief, and you talk about unreliability, right? How much more unreliable can you get than to threaten a NATO ally, which would involve invoking Article 5 to defend Greenland against yourself?
Barry, that's fine. I'm not defending Donald Trump. Barry, I'm not defending Donald Trump. I wasn't the Prime Minister who went there on bended knee trying to say, stab me in just one leg as you stabbed Europe in two. I mean, that's great, isn't it? He capitulates to Trump all the time. Then he makes this one act. Now he tries to pretend that he can actually influence things and say de-escalate it. And it's simply, they're not going to be listened to.
Right, we will continue this in just a moment. We do have to go to a break. It's 8:20.
This is LBC.
At TfL, we're helping make roads safer. We're continuing to roll out lower speed limits because 20 miles per hour roads have already seen 24% fewer collisions causing death or serious injury. We're also improving junctions to help keep you safe and improving visibility for our bus drivers with new wing mirror cameras. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Comparison of collisions data before and after implementation of 20 miles per hour speed limit.
And now your travel news. It's starting to look a bit congested on the A4872 southbound. We're hearing reports people are slowing down to look at the Volkswagen Transporter sales event. Apparently you can get £1,500 off any new Transporter. That's any variant, any trim, and any colour until the 31st of March. Now that's a deal worth queuing for. Search VW Transporter offers. UK retail customers 18 plus. Discount applies to price of all new Transporters ordered by 31st of March and delivered by 30th of June.
Get 3 months half price when you switch to an unlimited SIM with 3. That means quick streaming, faster downloads, and more money to spend on the things you love. Join the UK's fastest 5G network and get your unlimited SIM today. Buy now in store or c3.co.uk.
Unlimited 24-month light plan. Proof of switching required. Based on Ookla speed test intelligence data 2H 2025. All rights reserved. Subject to credit checks and terms.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:21 on LBC. Barry Gardiner is here, Labour MP for Brent West, Sir Alex Shelbrooke, Conservative MP for Wetherby and Easingwold, Tony Earnshaw, founder and chief executive of UK Commercial Group, and Lucy Reid, columnist for The New World, who was on this programme during the 2024 general election when we did what did we call it? A youth cross question. Youth hustings. And you were representing?
The Labour Party.
And you've moved into journalism now. How are you finding it all?
I mean, I'm loving it. I love writing for The New World. It's fantastic.
Which used to be, everything's former now, isn't it? It's the newspaper formerly known as the New European.
Yes.
With Alistair Campbell and
yes,
and your editor Matt, who started it. Give him my regards. Right, let's go to another question. It's from Andrew, who says, Sir Keir Starmer said that if he knew then what he knows now, he would never have appointed Peter Mandelson to the position of US ambassador. Does the panel think that if the Labour Party knew then what they know now about Keir Starmer's judgment, he would have been appointed as Labour leader? And will the PM survive these latest Mandelson revelations? I'm so tempted to go to Barry first again, but I'm going to let him work out his diplomatic answer. Tony, let's start with you.
Well, look, I run a company, a national company across the country, and when I take on an employee, it's important that I do my due diligence. And I check that that person who I'm taking on within my company has the right qualifications, is DBS checked because we work in care homes and schools, and is the right person for the job. I do reference checks. And I own a company. Keir Starmer is the Prime Minister of this country, and he is telling us that he hasn't completed simple checks. For me, it's an absolute disgrace. I feel like Peter Mandelson's been using a bit of a scapegoat at the moment. For which is Keir Starmer's mistakes.
He's being used as a scapegoat. That's an odd way of putting it.
Well, I think that he's been a bit sanctimonious, isn't he? And as far as I'm concerned, he's made the mistakes. He's appointed this member of staff who he's known for years. It's one of the old Labour boys who he's brought in as US ambassador to the US. And I just think that he hasn't done his checks.
But on the face of it, I mean, let's play devil's advocate for a second. On the face of it, he was ideally suited. He knew a lot about trade. We wanted to get someone in who would persuade Trump not to treat us like the EU, give us a better deal. Well, Peter Mandelson, I think you could say, helped in that process. He'd been on the European Commission. He'd been a British cabinet minister on, was it 2 or 3 occasions? 3 occasions.
And he managed to have a lot of experience. Why did he have to do it on 2 or 3 occasions?
And he managed to negotiate us 10% tariffs, so he did do the job. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Keir Starmer, who hasn't checked effectively his employees, who he's appointing in a very high up job, and he hasn't.
But would you expect the Prime Minister of this country to do all the due diligence? Would he not leave that to his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, and other people around him?
In 2008, Epstein was put in prison. In 2009, Peter Mandelson stopped at his house in New York, and he remained friends with him until 2011. Keir Starmer knew that, yet he still appointed him, and he was warned of the risks of employing this person. That's effectively what he's doing.
Okay. Lucy?
I mean, I think there's a point to be made that Morgan McSweeney, as the one who pushed for the appointment of Mandelson, which by all accounts he very much was, has now been sacked. Pushed to resign, we can probably assume. And he's essentially taken the blame for that. Starmer has admitted he's made a mistake. To say that Mandelson is being used as a scapegoat, these are Mandelson's issues that we're talking about. He's under police investigation. And I don't think that Keir Starmer is necessarily shying away from the conversation. The government they're releasing these documents. We're talking about them now. And to be honest, I don't think anything came out in the documents today that was that shocking. Obviously, there's one that's been heavily redacted that is being used in the Met investigation currently, which is probably going to have the most explosive content in it. To me, the biggest shock in it was that Mandelson demanded £500,000, and that wasn't even that much of a shock.
Why were you shocked by that?
I wasn't even shocked by that, exactly. I was shocked by the figure, but then when I thought about it for more than 2 seconds, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Yes, of course it's shocking. Of course it's not going to wash well with the public. And of course, if we were all sitting here right now and say, would you appoint Peter Mandelson to be your ambassador, we would all say no. But to say that he's being used as a scapegoat is, I think, quite a strange.
What about the point we were talking about in the last hour of the programme, where we were contrasting Keir Starmer's judgment on the war in Iran, which, from the general public point of view, I mean, there is an uptick in Labour's support in the opinion polls, and I think his personal ratings are probably going to go up. But then you contrast that with the judgment on this issue, and you think, well, yeah, although I suppose you could say, well, making the right judgment call on a war is much more important than appointing an ambassador.
Yes. But I also think it doesn't really help the perception that Starmer is not the one driving the train. I mean, for all of the allegations that have been lobbed at him that it's McSweeney's vision, McSweeney is the puppet master, he's been, telling Starmer what to do, and Starmer just says, I guess I'll follow. If you then look at what's come out about Mandelson, to then basically go, oh yeah, well, that was all McSweeney pushing that, it was all McSweeney's fault, you're basically admitting that was true, essentially, that he was just following, dancing to McSweeney's tune. So I think he's stuck. It's a bit of a rock and a hard place there, because you either admit that he was in full control of all the appointments and was 100% leading the ship of the new government's vision, and therefore is entirely responsible for the appointment of Mandelson, or he wasn't. But I don't think that the latter being the case that the government makes is going to come as a shock to anyone.
Alec?
Well, I think, first of all, let's not lose sight of the fact that we had an excellent ambassador to the United States in Dame Karen Pierce. And I know Dame Karen, met her on several occasions when I've been in the States. She knew all the wrinkles of Washington.
Has she ever hosted a reception for you, though?
She's hosted a reception for the NATO Parliamentary Assembly.
She hosted one specially for me once.
And
I will hear no ill of her.
Brilliant
whatsoever.
ambassador she is. And she was well respected. And she crucially knew how to get on the previous Trump administration, which, let's face it, was utterly chaotic, far more than this one is. And so she would have been well placed. So be under no illusion, to have a political appointment to an ambassadorial role as big as the American role, and there are very, very few political appointments. There are some notable ones, but there are few. And taking out somebody who was so well regarded seemed to me they were hell-bent on doing it. And I think that what has emerged is that the Prime Minister was aware of what the concerns were around Peter Mandelson. And as I believe it to be, the last Labour Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, actually got in contact and said, don't do it. These are the concerns I had at the time. But I mean, equally, talk about what he may have done in the commission, etc. But, we know why he resigned from Northern Ireland. We know why he resigned from business secretary. The man has scandal draped around his neck. And all the things about, is he a suitable person, etc. No, he's not. And what I just simply can't accept of the comment being made in defence is he went through all the proper checks and processes. A professional civil service diplomat would have fallen at the first fence over the things that Peter Mandelson had to resign from government from. It is a two-tier system. So they just wanted to owe him, I think. He said, he did a lot to help Keir Starmer in the election, etc. It stinks. And the problem is, it's always somebody else's fault. There always needs to be investigation. Take the Josh Simons thing about investigating Times journalists saying, well, I didn't know they were going to go that far. So I said, whoa, let's take a step back. You didn't like an article that exposed something about your organisation, so your instinct was to investigate them personally and try and bring them down. When did we ever get to that place in this country that a free press should be threatened by the people hoping to get into power? So then we have, there'll be a Cabinet Office investigation led by the man who did it. And it's always somebody else's fault. He's got to own this one. He should not have ever have appointed Peter Mandelson.
Barry Garner, you served in the Shadow Cabinet alongside Keir Starmer. The question is, will the PM survive these latest Mandelson revelations? And you didn't support him in the leadership election.
No, I didn't.
But do you think people are thinking, well, if I'd known then what I know now?
Well, I agree with something that Tony said, and I agree with something that Alex said. I think Sir Keir did know. So this idea, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have appointed him. That doesn't wash. No. He did know that, but then so did everybody else. And actually, at the time, I didn't hear huge outcries saying, "Oh, this man's got to do with Epstein, and therefore we shouldn't appoint him." I think Keir would have been a lot better had instead of saying, oh, well, if I'd known then what I know now, I think if he'd come out and said, look, I got it wrong, straight off. I got it wrong. I made a bad judgment call. Let me explain to you why I made a bad judgment call.
And he has apologised.
I thought this guy, he's been a trade commissioner in Europe. He has huge and very deep connections in Washington. He knows how to handle trade, and we're going to have problems with Trump over tariffs and trade. It made sense in that level, but I was wrong. I should have looked at the relationship with Epstein and said, no, this is a step too far, we just can't do it. Even though I thought that he might be the person, as ambassador, to help the UK negotiate a better deal.
And can we just be clear on that relationship? Sorry to interrupt you, Barry, just to say on that relationship with Epstein, is that, as I understand it, Gordon Brown was warning that he felt Peter Mandelson was giving Epstein privileged information. So this is beyond the relationship with a convicted paedophile.
That was in retrospect, but let's just remember this is a subject of the police.
We can't
investigation.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And Peter Mandelson denies any wrongdoing.
But Andrew's question was about Keir's judgment in general and whether the Labour Party would have elected him had they known what they know now about his
But that's like me saying, look, I've taken a member of staff who work for me and they're going into a care home and I failed to do my DBS checks and that person commits a crime within that care home. That buck stops with me, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it comes back to Lyndon Johnson again, doesn't it? The buck stops with the Prime Minister.
Always does.
He can't just palm it off on Morgan McSweeney.
No, indeed. And where I agree with Alec is that we did have a very, very impressive ambassador in Washington at the time. And therefore, at a very deep level, this appointment was not necessary.
Lucy?
I think to the question of will the Prime Minister survive these latest revelations, I was surprised, frankly, that he survived the previous round, but it was at the absolute forefront of public opinion, public conversation. Now, I think he has the perfect... I guess, with the war in Iran going on, I think it would be very reasonable for him to turn around and say, I'm not going to resign over a matter I've already apologised for. There's currently going through police investigation when there is a war, and it's my place to represent the UK on a global stage.
But if you are a Labour MP who is sort of maybe a bit on the fence on, well, should he survive or not, you get after the May elections, which let's assume are not going to go particularly well for Labour. I think we can probably all agree on that.
Certainly not. I think we're going to do very, very well, young
well
man.
done, Barry. Well done.
What's in that mug, Barry?
But my point is that this is going to be something that could tip the balance. If you're thinking, well, is Keir Starmer a man of great judgment and is he going to win us the next election? This is the sort of thing that over time accumulates. Well, it goes on the no side, doesn't it?
I think you're correct in that this could haunt him, but it's almost one of those cases where I feel that everybody who is already against Starmer is already against Starmer. I can't see this tipping more people.
Barry's nodding. He's one of them.
No, I just want the Labour Party to do well. And, you know, I agree with what Lucy's saying here. I don't think that this is any longer a salient issue in the minds of people.
Right, well, I've got to tip the balance now to go to the news headlines 5 minutes late. It's 8:35. Let's get the news headlines from Daisy Steele.
The Prime Minister was warned of the reputational risk Lord Mandelson posed when he was appointed US ambassador. Files released by Downing Street also reveal he asked for £500,000 as a severance payout when he was sacked last year. 32 countries, including the UK, have agreed to release 400 million barrels of oil from emergency reserves. It's hoped it will help to steady prices, with Iran warning they could reach $200 a barrel as it continues to block the Strait of Hormuz. An inmate has appeared in court charged with the murder of Ian Huntley. 43-year-old Anthony Russell is accused of attacking the Soham killer at HMP Frankland in County Durham. LBC weather: a windy night, especially in the north and west. Heavy rain for the north of Scotland and Northern Ireland. The odd shower elsewhere. A low of 3.
This is LBC.
Get 3 months half price when you switch to an unlimited SIM with 3. That means quick streaming, faster downloads, and more money to spend on the things you love. Join the UK's fastest 5G network and get your unlimited SIM today. Buy now in store or c3.co.uk.
Unlimited 24-month light plan. Proof of switching required. Based on Ookla speed test intelligence data 2H 2025. All rights reserved. Subject to credit checks and terms.
Sorry to interrupt your day, but I've just been diagnosed with dementia, and I'm going to need your help. I'll need help when I can no longer button a shirt or recognise my own family. My daughter will need help too. I worry this could ruin her life. And we will all need help to find a cure to end the devastation of dementia. I can't do this alone.
It will take a society to beat dementia. Alzheimer's Society.
It's hard to concentrate when you can't shake a health worry. It can feel like there's a wall between you and the rest of the world. Like you can't be fully present.
Hello, AXA Health. How can I help?
If something's playing on your mind, AXA Health support line nurses and counsellors are ready to listen day or night. For cover that cares, search AXA Health Insurance. 24/7 health support line available to all members. Treatment for pre-existing conditions is not covered.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:38 on LBC. Barry Gardner is here, Labour MP for Brent West. Alex Shelbrooke, Conservative MP for Wetherby and Easingwold, which sounds very idyllic. Lucy Reid, columnist for The New World, and Tony Earnshaw, founder and chief executive of the UK Commercial Group or just UK Commercial Group? And what do you do?
UK Commercial Group. We are a national facilities management company. We have 4 offices around the UK and vans across the UK as well. We carry out things like servicing to air conditioning, kitchen extraction, down to things like window cleaning, gutters and drains. We're a facilities management company.
How did you get involved in it? Because, I mean, it's not, how can I put this, the most glamorous sounding area of the economy, but it's absolutely vital.
Well, it's a service industry, but it is vital to places like care homes, schools, hotels, offices. So yes, it's we got into it many years ago. I actually started when I was 19 years old. I started the business with £300. I couldn't do it in this economy right now, but at the time, I managed to start the business and grow it, and we're taking just under £10 million a year now. So it's
wow. How many employees do you have?
About 140. So yeah, we're doing well. Yeah, it's a good business, and we've got a very loyal customer base.
Well, you've got lots of vans, which makes the next question very pertinent. In fact, I'm going to come to you first. It's a question from Rico. Whose responsibility is it to stop petrol and diesel prices zooming out of control?
At the minute, it's quite hard to stop them zooming out of control with the war that's currently going on in Iran. I think Labour were going to make it worse with the 5p fuel duty in September. Ultimately, it falls at the doorstep of the government to try and control these prices. We've got oil and gas in the North Sea, which we don't tap into enough. And for instance, I'll give you an example. We spend around about £40,000 a month on fuel. With the current prices, we predicted our fuel bill will be about £50,000 this month, so a £10,000 increase because of this war. Ultimately, it's costing me, my employees, and the average person across the UK. We are paying for this war, as far as I'm concerned.
So, in the end, I mean, most businesses are complaining about the national insurance rise, which is stopping people from taking on more people. Well, if you've got another £10,000 a month added to your costs, I mean, that's another disincentive to take on or to expand.
Oh, I mean, it's crazy at the moment. Like you said, there was I think it was £25 billion national insurance tax raid in all businesses. I know a lot of businessmen, and actually people are feeling quite demotivated at the moment. We've got the new workers' rights bill coming out, which is smothering business. We've had minimum wage going up quite a lot, percentage, over the last few years. We had Nest, which came out quite a few years ago. But it's just, business have got broad shoulders, but at some point, it'll be the case of the feather that breaks the camel's back. And we feel like we're getting no support from the current government. Business is really hard. Like I said, I've been in business for 22 years. I started with very little. I don't believe I could do that now. I really don't. And this current economy, and it's sad. And when I started business it was like the early 2000s, it was championed when you started a business. There was a really good buzz. If you start a business, it was championed. Now I feel like it's a taboo. You start a business and you do well, you're getting put down, you're getting told you shouldn't be doing so well, and it feels like you're doing something wrong. Ultimately, business in this country pays for everything. This is how we circulate money and how we bring money into the economy. Without that, we can't pay for the police, we can't pay for the NHS, we can't pay for MPs. So as far as I'm concerned, we need more support, and we need a Prime Minister and a Chancellor who's actually going to support business. And at the moment, we feel like we've got zero support, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Alec.
So I think, right, the facts are instability is sending fuel up, fuel will come down. But what it doesn't need is another 6p being put on it. And businesses trying to plan around a difficult set of economic circumstances just need the Chancellor and the Prime Minister today to say, we're going to do what's happened for the last 15 years. We're not putting on the inflation.
Why should they say that now? Why isn't this too early? Because the oil prices might have come down to their former level within a very short time. We don't know that.
But why add more tax to business? So whether the prices come down or not, I mean, first of all, you said my constituency sounds idyllic. It is rural. Most people in rural constituencies have to drive their own vehicles. Putting more and more tax on them driving those vehicles is literally in some cases taking away their mobility. But you've just heard from a businessman. I'm a politician, okay? I look at things from a certain point of view. You've got a businessman sat here who's just said the price fluctuation is £10,000 a month. So maybe it comes back. Why put that back with the tax afterwards? We've seen with national insurance, we've seen tax coming out of business constantly. And we've seen the highest levels of youth unemployment for the first time ever being higher than they are in Europe, the European continent. I mean, that should really make us stop and think, what are we doing to business? So just make the commitment that stop playing, don't whip it out the hat of the budget and say, oh, guess what, everybody, I'm not putting 5p back on petrol, etc. Businesses need some help and stability along the way. This is where I think it goes wrong. And I was in for Rachel Reeves' statement about the economy, I think it was on Monday. I just thought it's a parallel universe. You're living in a parallel universe. The statements that are being made, she basically managed to say nothing for 40 minutes. I mean, nothing.
The spring statement talk about?
No, not the spring statement. She made a statement on the state of the economy because of the war on Monday.
That expired basically the same day.
And, well, again, she was talking about the OBR said this. The OBR published those figures on the second week of January. Yeah. I mean, this is mad.
Barry?
Look, first of all, there are a lot of people who are going to be suffering, families who are going to be suffering as a result of the hike in oil prices. And I really do feel for them. I have to say I was surprised when Tony said that it was £10,000 on his fuel bill a month. That's awful.
I thought you could say a lot more than that, to be honest.
What surprised me was that, nonetheless, earlier this evening you said that you were fully in support of the war that's caused it. So it seems that there's a bit of doublethink there.
Well, I'm fully in support of the war because I think that Iran needs controlling and they are spreading terrorism across the world.
But you're not happy about the results of that, the consequences of that, which are putting £10,000 a month on your fuel bill. That's nobody else doing.
The prices up by 5p in September has nothing to do with the war.
That's the decision that you think.
It's a very silly thing to do.
But it wasn't the question, Barry. The question is about should you put 5p on it in tax?
Exactly.
Actually, it was about whose responsibility is it to stop petrol prices zooming out of control? Well, the responsibility is on the International Energy Agency, which today has released 400 million barrels from the strategic reserves of 13 different countries around the world. Now, that is, I think I'm right in saying, about 3 times as much as they did even when the Ukraine conflict saw the price of oil go through the roof.
Why aren't we using the reserves in the North Sea?
Yeah, that was the other thing that I wanted to pick you up on. You said oil and gas in the North Sea, we don't tap into enough. Actually, we don't tap into it. It's owned by companies who exploit the North Sea. It doesn't come into the UK. It goes onto the international market and it's sold on the international market. So this idea that we have a strategic reserve, which is the North Sea, I'm afraid just isn't the case.
So you were saying we own none of the North Sea?
No, what I'm saying is that you didn't understand the relationship of the people who own the oil in the North Sea. In fact, if you want to go into that relationship, we have had the lowest tax rate for the development of fields in the North Sea in the entire world. It was at 37%, when the global average is 75%.
But the fact is, the government are refusing to allow new licences to exploit oil and gas in the North Sea.
Indeed, because
so he was right.
No, he's not, because we don't tap into that. Yeah, but we don't get that oil and gas. It goes onto the international market.
But the tax revenues come into the economy and can be used to stop 5p fuel hikes.
The only reason that those develop those. It's a declining field, as you know, Ian. By 9% a year, the North Sea is a declining field, and the only way that the additional areas that are being exploited is competitive is because of the subsidies that are given in tax breaks to those companies to develop them.
Well, we could...
you don't have to take
No, we haven't heard from Lucy yet, and I need to go to another break.
I mean, I'll say very quickly, I do sympathise with everybody on their points about those suffering with the cost of living crisis, increase in fuel duty, businesses. I agree, young youth unemployment is an issue that I write about a lot, and I agree there needs to be more injection to businesses to bring youth employment down. But I also agree with Barry, and I also think there's a lot of hypocrisy around the same people who do get very hysterical about fuel prices also tend to be the same people who treat net zero like a dirty word and don't want to talk about renewable energy and don't want to talk about ways to wean this country's energy resources off of crude oil and petrol, because every time there's a foreign war, like in Iran, like in Russia, the same thing happens. There's huge shocks and the price of oil massively skyrockets.
That's why we need to go for renewables.
And that's why we need to go for more renewable sources. But
But I don't know anybody that's arguing that renewables are a bad thing. I think even Nigel Farage doesn't argue that renewables are a bad thing. He just thinks the rush to net zero is damaging the economy because it's too fast.
But couldn't it be argued that if we rush to net zero, as you say, then we will avoid these kind of issues in the future where every time there is a foreign crisis...
But if you're putting your economy at a competitive disadvantage by doing so, which I think is one of the arguments used, then that can't be a good thing.
But it's to get to a competitive advantage quicker. That's the point.
Well, that's a big question as to whether that would happen, though, isn't there? But which we can't exploit now because we need to go on to some more questions. It's 8:49.
This is LBC.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on. Sorry.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Got any tips for the football? Your best bet is to head over to BetVictor. They're giving new customers a terrific welcome offer. If you bet a minimum of £10, they'll give you £30 in free bets.
Phew, that's a steal of a deal.
It's a good darn deal that'll make you squeal for real. Neil?
My name's not Neil.
I know, but it rhymes.
Listen to Harry and make your best bet on the football at BetVictor. 18 plus, opt in and bet on any football marketing at odds of evens or greater. No cash out, 7-day expiry. Terms and conditions apply. Gambleaware.org.
Get 3 months half price when you switch to an unlimited SIM with 3. That means quick streaming, faster downloads, and more money to spend on the things you love. Join the UK's fastest 5G network and get your unlimited SIM today. Buy now in store or c3.co.uk.
Unlimited 24-month light plan. Proof of switching required. Based on Ookla speed test intelligence data 2H 2025. All rights reserved. Subject to credit checks and terms.
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Life feels better with a smile. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Modern, comfortable and affordable dentistry for all. See online for our price match promise. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling. Keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:51, Barry Gardner, Alex Shelbrook, Lucy Reed and Tony Earnshaw with us answering your questions. Right, a WhatsApp question from Jake. Does the number of people who wanted to take part in this march, which has been banned, show how deeply divided our society has become along secular lines? Well, a bit of background to that. The Home Secretary has today accepted the Met Police's request to ban the Al-Quds March, which was due to take place in London on Sunday over fears it could cause serious disorder because of the march's alleged links to the Iranian regime. I think we can take out the word alleged there, frankly. Lucy.
Oh, no follow-up, just ask. Okay. I don't know if it necessarily points to something as directly as how divided our society has become along sectarian lines. I'll admit the coverage of this over the last few days has really, I've found myself being pulled in both directions. I think the interview that you did just previously to this current show was really, really interesting. And I do think...
This was with the guy who's protesting outside the Foreign Office. He's been there since 2023.
Yeah. And I do think that there is a very interesting conversation to be had about this march. I mean, it's not been entirely banned. They are having a static demonstration now, I think, is what...
I don't know.
I think that's the rule. They can't march, but they can have a demonstration. I mean, I was at the National Gallery on Saturday, and there was a pro-royal family in Iran demonstration that was shouting, "Thank you, Bibi, thank you, Trump," much to the horror of people queuing for the National Gallery. I think this conflict has definitely demonstrated just how deep our perceptions of foreign conflicts and domestic issues really go. I do think that banning protests always is a difficult conversation to have, and is always one that definitely sends hackles at people's spines. It sends hackles at my spine. And I think, to be honest, I don't have a straight answer, but I think it's a very complex debate.
Well, I completely sympathise with you, because we did a phone-in 9 o'clock hour last night on it as to whether it should be banned. And I found myself saying, well, my heart says, absolutely, we don't want these evil chants on our streets. But then my head says, yeah, but free speech is an important thing. And even though they might be chanting things that I would 100% find abhorrent, is that the right reason to ban something?
And you do have to think from an optics perspective. This is the first march, I think, to be banned officially since 2012.
Yep.
And if you think about the main headlines around arrests at protests in the last year or so, have all been at pro-Palestine marches with associations with Palestine Action. Obviously, this specific day is very tied to anti-Israel sentiment. If you look at the optics of this from the government's perspective, for people who come from a pro-Palestine, pro-Gaza, not necessarily anti-Israel, but definitely in that sort of pro-Palestine perspective, you can see that the optics of this just makes perfect fodder to accuse this government of exactly what a lot of people are accusing them of, which is not being in support of Palestine.
Okay, Barry.
I think it was the right decision to ban the march. I think we're talking about, and you rightly scrubbed the word alleged, the connection with the Iranian regime at a time when we have had our bases attacked by Iran. I think that connection in itself, I'm not sure that it shows how deeply divided our society has become, but I think it does show a number of things. And that is that that our country has been infiltrated by extremists from the Iranian regime in a deeply unsettling way, that they're able to whip up this sort of protest. And that concerns me greatly. I absolutely agree with what you said about the importance of freedom of speech. It's absolutely right that we should be able to go and say things and that offend other people. That's what freedom of speech is about. It's about the right to offend. But actually, I think the reason I would agree with the decision to ban it is because I think this is more than just the right to offend people being exercised. Sorry, Lucy, you want to comment?
And I also do say I do agree with you in the sense that the reasoning for the Met asking the Home Office to ban this is because of heightened tensions around this specific march, around this specific day. The reason why I brought up sort of pro-Iranian royalty protesters earlier was to say that I can understand the perspective from the Metropolitan Police of saying this is a particularly tense time to have this specific march. Okay. So I can definitely understand
Tony.
that.
I think it was 100% right to be banned. As far as I'm concerned, our allies are at war with Iran. We've been bombed ourselves at the RAF site in Cyprus. During World War II, would we have allowed pro-Hitler protests to be allowed on our streets? I don't think so.
Alec?
It is the right thing to ban it. I think one of the problems here is that they can't be policed in terms of arresting the people and charging the people who blatantly break the law. And I'm going to bring it back to the one thing we've not mentioned in this context is about how scared the Jewish community are to be on the streets when these things are taking place. Now, I speak as somebody who has a Jewish community. There's a huge Jewish community in Leeds. My Jewish community, Jews in Leeds, are scared to go into Leeds city centre at a weekend when these protests are happening. Now, you are allowed freedom of speech, and I absolutely support freedom of speech. I'm a member of the Free Speech Union. We have laws in place to protect people, and until they can be properly policed, so that the people who are intimidating and inciting violence against Jewish communities, which is blatant anti-Semitism because they're saying Israel are doing this and you are Jewish, so it's your fault. That is blatant anti-Semitism. And until the police can say we can properly police these events, we can take the action within the laws we have to protect all citizens in this society, then no, these events should not be going ahead.
Right, let's go to our fun question. It's from Ben in Crawley. A film is going to be made about the life of John Bon Jovi, but who would you want to play you in a biopic about you? Barry.
I'd want the stupidest, ugliest, most inarticulate person they could find so that people would look at it and say, you know, that Barry Gardner, he wasn't actually that bad.
I was going to say, do you have a self-worth issue? Alec?
So when I was big fat Alex 7 stone ago, people first of all used to say I looked like John Goodman, but I was when I had a NATO conference in Montreal, we were on Air Canada, and the stewardess did a double take, and she came up to me and said, she said, I'm sorry, I thought you were the actor in Modern Family, Cam. And so maybe I'll have to be him.
No idea who that is. Tony?
I haven't got a funny answer, but you have to be my daughter. She's more beautiful, more intelligent, and much wiser than I am.
It'd be like a female James Bond then.
Lucy?
Well, I'm only 22, so if you made a film of my life, I don't think it'd be very interesting.
Could be a short film.
Could be a short film, I suppose. Well, I don't have an answer, so I was going to say that if they made a film of my life, it would probably be in many, many years, so the actress probably hasn't been born yet. That's my way of
I'm going to say
answer.
Taylor Swift.
Oh. Well, that's a very nice compliment.
Take it.
Oh, I'm not going to insult you, am I? I did Barry, but there we are. We have another fun text here about you, Barry. Please, could you wish Barry a belated happy birthday for yesterday? I think I've got that right. That's from Marion in Bromley, who is Baroness Grender's auntie.
Oh, God bless you, Marion. Thank you very much. Yes, but please don't read out the bit in brackets.
Which is Barry's age. I wouldn't do that to you. Thank you all very much indeed. Now, on tomorrow's panel, we have the former Conservative Cabinet Minister Dame Theresa Villiers, Human Rights campaigner Peter Tatchell, Labour MP Danny Beales, and the Free Speech Union's Connie Shaw. So they'll be here to take your questions from 8 o'clock tomorrow. Well, in the next hour, I'm going to be joined by Abby Foster, personal finance expert. She's going to take your calls about the financial consequences of this war in Iran. We've all seen petrol and diesel prices go up massively. My local petrol station, it's gone up from 140 to 155 almost overnight. Oil prices do seem to be coming down. But what are the implications for us all as consumers? Because it's not just fuel that's going to be affected here. It's going to be all over the economy. So your questions to Abby Foster in just a moment.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, Sir Keir Starmer was warned that Lord Mandelson's past links to Jeffrey Epstein posed a reputational risk before he was confirmed as the UK's ambassador to Washington. Newly released government documents show officials raised concerns about his relationship with the late paedophile financier. The Treasury says the vetting process fell short and steps have now been taken to fix weaknesses in the system. But former Foreign Secretary Sir James Cleverly told LBC the appointment raises serious questions about cronyism.
This is jobs for the boys. This is favours for mates. This is the Prime Minister prioritising this rather shabby personal relationship above due diligence and above what is an incredibly damaging for the country, which is the appointment of Peter Mandelson to this role.
The UK and more than 30 other countries have agreed to the largest ever release of oil from their emergency reserves. It's hoped the move will address a spike in prices as the war in the Middle East continues to rattle the market. President Trump says the war could end soon because there's nothing left in Iran to target. Sir Lawrence Freedman, the Emeritus Professor of War Studies at King's College London, he's told LBC that although there's no sign of regime change, the conflict has gone quite well for the US.
They've destroyed a bit more of the nuclear capacity they said they'd already destroyed last June. They've taken out the bulk of the Iranian Navy. They've attacked lots of missile sites and so on. So in that sense, they can say it's going fine.
Sir Keir Starmer says plans to put up fuel duty are being kept under review. Petrol prices have already risen by 5 pence per litre since the war began at the end of last month. That hundreds of mortgage deals have also been pulled from the market as the crisis further affects the cost of living. An inmate has appeared in court charged with the murder of Ian Huntley. 43-year-old Anthony Russell is accused of attacking the Soham killer at HMP Frankland in County Durham. A woman who falsely accused 10 men of rape has been jailed for 4.5 years. 31-year-old Stacey Sharples, who's from Bolton, admitted perverting the course of justice in relation to false reports she made over a 6-year period. Many of her victims went on to lose their partners and their jobs. And the National Lottery says a UK ticket holder has come forward to claim the third biggest British jackpot ever. They've scooped over £181 million in last night's Euro Millions. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 58 points at 10,353. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather, a windy night, especially in the north and west. Heavy rain for the north of Scotland and Northern Ireland. The odd shower elsewhere, a low of 3. Windy tomorrow with outbreaks of heavy blustery rain moving southwards. Drier but dull in southern England, a high of 14 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daisy Steele.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
You probably think you're pretty good at multitasking behind the wheel. I mean, you have to multitask to drive. So what's wrong with checking your phone? The thing is, your brain simply doesn't work. Even a quick look at the message, for quick reply, affects your concentration and makes you less able to react to hazards. If you use a mobile phone while driving, you're 4 times more likely to crash. Think. Put your phone away.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 5 minutes past 9 on LBC. You're listening to Iain Dale. Now, in this hour, we're going to talk about personal finance, and particularly with relation to the war in Iran, because I think there are all sorts of consequences for all of our household budgets, how we're going to be able to spend our money, save our money, and indeed find out what costs are going to increase. I think mortgage costs is possibly going to be the one that we all need to look out for, because I think I read in one of the papers this morning that some of the mortgage companies are already putting up their rates, even though interest rates haven't been put up by the Bank of England. Now, clearly, I'm not a personal finance expert, so you don't want to really hear what I've got to say on this. But I know someone who you will want to listen to, and it's LBC's personal finance expert, Abby Foster, who's joining me for this hour. She's going to be taking your calls, your questions on WhatsApp and text as well, 0345 6060 973. So if there's anything that you're particularly concerned about, or just want an idea of where the markets are going to go maybe over the next few months, particularly, I suspect, mortgages are that is the major cost for, I think, most of us at the moment, isn't it? There's what we spend each each month on our mortgages. And we've got used to interest rates coming down over the last couple of years. I think, as Keir Starmer keeps reminding us, I think we've had 6 interest rate cuts. And we've kind of got used to the fact that that's going to go in one direction. Well, as Harold Macmillan used to say, events, dear boy, events. And this war possibly might mean that interest rates would go up, or will they? Because you could argue that if this war reduces economic activity, if it means that economic growth is going to be even lower than it was, then that's an argument for cutting interest rates again. But as I say, I'm not the expert on these things. But before we come to Abby Foster and to your calls, this afternoon in Parliament, Keir Starmer was asked about 2 different issues affecting the cost of living. First, he was asked about whether taxes on petrol and diesel purchases will indeed be going up soon.
Fuel duty is frozen. It's going to remain frozen until September. And we will keep the situation under review in light of what's happening in Iran.
Then the Prime Minister was asked this by the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey.
I asked him to guarantee that energy bills won't rise by hundreds of pounds in July. He didn't answer. So let me try again. Will he give people that energy bill guarantee now?
Prime Minister. Can I thank him for raising this, because people will be really worried about the impact on them, and just to reassure households that the cap is in place until the end of June, until July, and therefore that deals with the situation for households there. We are working with the sector and with others and with allies to do everything we can to make sure those energy bills don't rise, so we're working round the clock on that.
Abby, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you. How do you feel in an optimistic mood at the moment about the way that this might go, or do you feel that we are in for 6 months, a year, 2 years of doom and economic gloom?
I'm really hoping that maybe we have about 3 to 6 months of stress where we're not really sure where things lie. But obviously, I think, as with everyone, I'm hoping that this Middle East crisis ends, and then we hopefully see the world get back to a bit more stability. And like you said at the beginning, we get back to a place where the Bank of England can start to drop those rates. Because personally, the next Bank of England base rate is on the 19th of March. I cannot envisage Andrew Bailey, obviously the governor, and any of the Monetary Policy Committee to adjust that. I think they'll leave it at 3.75, to be honest.
Why do you think that? Because there'll be a lot of people who think, well, it's inevitable that interest rates are either going to go up or down. I mean, just keeping them the same, I mean, in a sense, that doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, the only reason is because I think inflation is going to be, well, obviously inflation is a backward-looking metric, and so we're not going to see that inflationary figure impact right in this second. And so even the next inflation figure that comes out probably still won't incorporate the Middle East conflict. And so Andrew Bailey and his team will probably be cautious and say, right, we're not going to do anything just yet, but we might have to in the future. And so I think that's probably why we'll end up with something that's flat. But like you said, I was looking at the mortgage rates today. You know, an average 2-year fixed is now 5.01. Obviously, last week it was 4.84. A 5-year fixed is 5.09%. And so many mortgage lenders are pulling their rates at a ridiculous level because they are concerned. Even though the Bank of England hasn't made a decision yet, it's next week and they think that it's going to be either flat or a possible raise, but I think the most likely is a flat.
But what will this do for the housing market? Because as far as I can see, the housing market is more or less dead at the moment. This could kill it off completely.
I'm hearing the same thing. The housing market is struggling, and I agree. Obviously, what I would have preferred is to see a reduction in that Bank of England base rate, so that mortgage rates could start to come down and we could start to stimulate the house buying economy. But yeah, right now that isn't the case because I think banks are nervous. Most banks do a lot of this stuff based on emotion and thought process rather than what's actually happening. And so, yeah, I think what we're going to see is a bit of a cautious next few months. But like I said at the beginning, I'm really hopeful that obviously this calms down and then we don't see that having a long-term impact.
I mean, obviously, 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of people listening to this programme will have gone through various degrees of financial trauma with the way that interest rates really did go up. Inflation at one point reached 11%. Yep. And I think there were a lot of people who probably lost their houses because of the way that mortgage rates went up. I mean, people often look on the dark side of these things and can never, maybe sometimes don't see the wood for the trees. But can you at all reassure people that we're not going to go through that degree of economic trauma that we did a few years ago?
I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't reassure people. And obviously everything I talk about is financial education and not advice. So if you are really concerned, I would obviously speak to your lender, speak to a mortgage advisor, someone that knows your circumstance. But like I said, I'm hopeful that this is just going to be a trickle down, because you're right. We saw a huge rise up to 11.1 in November 2022. And then we're seeing gradual drops now. And the process was we should be getting more and more until we get towards, those nicer numbers that make taking out a mortgage a bit more affordable. But right now, I think my suggestion to many people would be, if you can, speak to a mortgage advisor or your lender and try and fix in a rate, and then review it as and when things change.
How many people, I don't know if you can answer this, but what percentage of the mortgage market, what percentage of consumers are on fixed rates at any one time? I mean, is it 10%? Is it 50%?
I would have to go and get the figures out for that. I'll check in the break. But, I can imagine for a lot of people, being on the variable is the abnormal. So being on a variable mortgage means that you're just taking whatever the base rate is. And some people stay on those because they anticipate the rates coming down. And I have heard that a lot recently with people that I follow, that follow me on social media. They'll say, I've been waiting and I've been on my variable because I was told that at the beginning of this year rates were going to keep coming down and I didn't want to fix when something was going to go down. But unfortunately, that has not been the case.
I always go from the premise that whatever I decide to do is going to be the wrong decision. But, household budgeting, particularly, if you're on, say, an average household income or below, that is absolutely crucial. You can't just sort of go on a wing and a prayer. You do have to almost account for every pound that that's coming in and how you're going to spend it. And things like this just ruin any budgeting that you've been able to do. So what's your advice to people in those circumstances?
Of course, it's incredibly difficult and so unfair as well, especially because a lot of people I've been talking to have said, well, it's not even happening in the UK. Why is this impacting us? But the ripple effect of global prices and oil prices and transport costs have filtered their way into the UK system. So I would say to many people, like I said, don't forget to speak to mortgage advisors, your lender. If you are in a situation where you might be unable to pay, obviously seek out professional support. You can speak to people like Citizens Advice or Step Change if you're really in stressful situations. But also, having an emergency fund pot. I know it's a really boring thing to say, but putting a certain amount of savings away each month that's specifically there for emergencies. And if you have one, this might be a situation in which you have to use it. Yeah.
But people have have got out of the habit of saving more generally over the long term. But there'll be a lot of people saying, what's all very well, are you talking about saving?
I know.
Every pound I earn has to go out to feed my family or clothe my family or house my family.
No, I do not. I totally agree. And I think it can be really tone deaf sometimes when, accountants and finance professionals say you should just save. Yeah, that's great if you had the extra money. But it's the only way in which, creating these savings pots, even if it's a really small amount of money, can protect you in times of crisis and stop you from leaning on things like debt. But yeah, I do understand that. I really do.
Anita has texted in to say, if anything, the war will cause inflation to go up because of fuel prices. So this would make the Bank of England increase rates to bring it down again. And that is sort of economics 101, isn't it?
Yes.
That is what the Bank of England always does. If you want to reduce inflation, you put up interest rates. But there is the law of unintended consequences.
Exactly. So right now, obviously, 30 million barrels a day go through the Strait of Hormuz, and they are, as much as we don't get as much of our oil from there. We are a price taker, so we go on the world oil price, and therefore it's meant that all of our oil prices, so petrol, propane, all of these things have gone up, and they're making the cost of petrol and diesel go up. I think I just checked before the show, so petrol's around 139.9p, 154.9 for diesel, and that's up by over 20% in the last week. Flights are going to go up because obviously the cost of oil has gone up for them as well.
You're a personal finance expert, not an oil expert.
No.
So feel free to say, I can't answer this question.
Of course.
But why is it that the price is, in my local petrol station, diesel is now 155, 15p more than it was 2 days ago?
Yep.
Well, petrol will have already been bought by the oil company way before this all started. And I think a lot of people scratch their heads and think, well, are they profiteering now?
Do you know what? They might be. And actually, as a finance expert, I'm aware that oil is much easier to store than things like gas. I understand why gas prices go up quite quickly, because obviously it's difficult to store gas, and therefore...
Thanks to Liz Truss, because she closed all of the gas storage places, apparently.
Well, yeah. It's much easier to store oil, and so we actually do have a surplus supply in the UK. So yes, but I think it's these oil companies possibly taking a bit of a look at the situation and thinking, okay, well, what could the supply look like in a few months' time? Shall we prepare for it now? But yeah, I do think it is quite unfair. But there's been an oil release over the last few days. We're at $89 a barrel, but there's still, days before the Middle East conflict, we were at 67. So it's a huge spike, and the oil prices have knock-on impact on obviously transport costs, which then makes everything more expensive. Fertilizer costs have gone up by over 21%, making food prices inevitably we will see increase in food prices.
This is where, I said the law of unintended consequences earlier. This is exactly it, where just because we all think, well, if fuel prices go up, that means it's going to cost more to fill up with a tank of petrol or diesel. But we don't necessarily think, that adds to transport costs, then that adds to food costs. And that's where you get the inflationary spiral, don't you?
Exactly. It's a ripple effect. Everything is impacted by it. If you think of just as, oil impacting the cost of a car that then transports your food from north to south, all of these things have a knock-on effect. And I was speaking to a farmer today, and he was saying how people forget that farmers, especially in the UK, don't operate on these huge profit margins where they're making loads of extra money. And so when costs like this impact them, they have to pass it on to the consumer. Otherwise, what are they meant to do? And so then the consumer gets frustrated, and we have this knock-on effect. And I think a lot more support could definitely be done by our current government.
Right, we have some calls coming in, but we'd love more. 0345 6060 973. If you have a question for Abby Foster, personal finance expert, she's here with me until 10, and she'll be able to answer all the questions that I wouldn't have a clue to. So that's a good thing, isn't it? It's 19 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Right then, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life? Anglers, ramblers, climbers, five-a-siders, surfers, gamers, bikers, hang gliders, book clubbers. Are we up for it? Let's go all in against cancer, all in to help fund life-saving research. Sign up to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
Nobody knows Vegas like BetMGM. And we know just how loud it can get. So sometimes it's important to turn it down or take a break. Because a little pause keeps the fun in play. To find out more about BetMGM's safer gambling tools and how we can support you to keep your play safe, visit the safer gambling area of our app or website. BetMGM. 18 plus, please gamble responsibly.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
Abby Foster is here, LBC's personal finance expert. We're asking for your calls on the current, possibly, I was going to say the current economic crisis. Do I describe what we're in now as an economic crisis? Maybe that's over-egging the pudding a bit, but we could well be in one within a few months, depending on what happens in the Middle East. Mark says, will equity release be affected in any way other than interest rates being higher? E.g., will it become less available?
I can't speak for the banks, but yeah, I think the main impact will be interest rates higher. So therefore, in theory, you might get less for your equity release. But I think it'd be very wise if you're going through it right now to speak to specifically your lender or your mortgage advisor and really weigh out whether it makes sense to do it right now or whether you might be better to wait for a certain period of time. I think I would probably be in the camp of waiting to see what happens in the next few weeks and months, because as we know, Trump talks and we see changes almost overnight. The other night I was writing about oil prices and then suddenly he came on and spoke about how, he was wrapping up the war in his words, and suddenly oil prices started to drop again. It's so changeable.
Imagine having that power.
Oh God, it's absolutely wild. But they've always said that since I've been studying finance, it's the US sneezes and the rest of the world catches a cold. So I think we just have to be aware.
How do you become a personal finance expert?
Well, so my background, I am a chartered accountant. So I worked in practice and then industry to become ACA chartered accountant. And then about 4 years ago, I set up a company that teaches finance in schools, which I still run and I absolutely love. And then I started social media to market that business. And I started recording reels explaining things like pay slips and student loans and how pensions work. And then very quickly, LBC reached out and asked if I'd speak on the show. And the rest is sort of history. I've been doing a little bit here and there for 2 years now in this capacity.
And a week on Sunday, you're going to be sitting in for Dean Dunham on the Consumer Hour at 9 o'clock.
Yes, I am. 22nd, I'll be doing the 9 till 10 shift, talking about all things personal finance. So if anyone's got any questions, tune in then.
No, we want them to phone in now.
Of course, right now. But if you think of something after the show and go, oh, who should I ask? That's when you think, oh, I'll wait for that one.
Okay, well, the number is 0345 6060 973. That's the number that Rob in Welwyn Garden City has dialed. Hello, Rob.
Hiya, thanks for taking my call.
Hi.
I'm currently remortgaging at the moment, so we were on a 2-year fixed rate at 4.2%. 2 weeks ago, we got from another lender a deal 2-year fixed for 3.75%. We've been offered that and we're going through it now, but it hasn't completed. So given what's going on now, is there a risk that the new bank we're going to could pull that and reoffer us something at a higher rate?
Bit the opposite of gazumping almost.
Yeah.
Hi, Rob. So there is some risk. I would obviously, are you going through a mortgage advisor?
Yeah, we went through it. Well, a broker, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, obviously, hopefully they'll be doing as much as they physically can to get the paperwork done ASAP. But yeah, the news today was that a lot of lenders are pulling a lot of their rates. But I think it's for if you've had no offer whatsoever, those new rates aren't on offer to you. Hopefully, because you've had the offer and you're going through the process, I'd say 3.75 is pretty good, given obviously the average is now around 5. I looked at the break about the amount of people, the percentage of people on fixed rates, and it's somewhere between 85 and 90% of people. So yeah, if you are looking for fixed rates, then 3.75 seems like a very good number at the moment.
And also, is there not an incentive for the mortgage companies to get these kind of deals that Rob is talking about, get them through? Because, I mean, if they're going to go 2 or 3 months of a fallow period, sort of a bird in the hand and all that.
I agree. I hope so. But obviously banks are, ironically, tend to be quite emotional individuals. And so they make these decisions based on things they predict to happen. And I think there's a high prediction now. Obviously, before the Middle East, it was 80% chance that the Bank of England would cut their rates. And now it looks obviously more certain that they might keep or raise. And so I think the banks are sort of trying to predict what will happen, and also that the support that will be in place as well from the government.
And Rob, are you getting the feeling that they're prevaricating or that they do actually want to get it through for you?
No, it looks like they want to get it through for us. But, there's always that risk that they might, I'm just thinking they might pull it because, I don't know, in my mind I'm thinking, we can get a higher rate so we can charge them more. I don't know if it works like that, but yeah.
Well, psychologically, inevitably, people do think like that, don't they?
Yeah, it shouldn't do. I think also from an ethical standpoint, they really, obviously these banks shouldn't be profiteering from people's...
Banks and ethical in the same sentence?
Well, yeah, it's a good... You're looking at me and I don't know what to say. But yes, in theory. But hopefully you've got a mortgage broker that's supporting you and speeding it through.
OK, Rob, good luck in that. Hope it goes through for you. Roddy says, do you think medium risk funds will go down any more over the next couple of months? What is a medium risk fund?
Well, I assume what we're talking about here is an investment fund. A medium risk would be that obviously maybe it's half in equities, so in investments like stocks and shares, and half maybe in bonds or less risky investments. But I think when it comes to investments right now, we've had very volatile investment stock market for the last few weeks. I think, hopefully that sort of plateaued out. A lot of these funds have remanaged their funds into things like energy and military sector, which are in times of crisis doing reasonably well.
John says, I know this would be political suicide, but in theory, couldn't money be taken out of the economy through temporary tax increases rather than relying on higher interest rates to control inflation? Wouldn't that reduce spending in a similar way, except the money would go to the Treasury rather than hitting mortgage holders and benefiting savers?
Yes, I do think that would be political suicide, if that's what you're asking, John.
But having said that, the last government put taxes up to the highest rate since the Second World War. This government has added even more onto people's taxes. So it's not inconceivable that at some point they might think, well, it's the only way forward.
Yeah, but would it not just stunt growth in a huge way? We're already seeing a lot of people making quite like big decisions when they hit that. I know we're not going to get the violin out for these people, but if you're on something like £100,000, you start to incur what's called the 60% tax trap. And lots of people in that bracket, so between 100,000, 124,000, 140, stop thinking about, what's the point in doing an extra hour when I'm only going to take home? Sometimes if you've got a student loan on top of that, or even a master's, sometimes you're only taking 23p on the pound home. So yes, an increase in taxes, technically yes, would overnight give the Treasury a lot more money, but would it stunt the growth? Because people go, well, why am I continuing to work if every extra pound I'm only going to get a certain percentage to take home? And
that word incentive seems to have disappeared from our lexicon now, and I don't understand. When I can't remember which chancellor it was who introduced that the
6% tax trap.
Yeah.
So I think it was it was because obviously the NatWest privatisation, wasn't it? So was it George Osborne?
Could well have been.
Yeah.
But the fact, if it was George Osborne, he was last Chancellor 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you think, why hasn't any successive Chancellor...
It was Gordon Brown, wasn't it? Sorry, I'm chatting at you. You carry on, Ian.
No,
sorry.
I just don't understand when there is a patent unfairness. And okay, as you say, nobody is going to get an onion out of their pocket to cry for people who are only between 100 and 125,000 a year. But it is ludicrous that if you're £1 over that, you're not charged at such a penal rate.
Yeah, and also you lose things like child benefit. There's lots of things that you lose around that element that I think
quite
is
right
stunting.
too, I would say.
Well, yeah, but it's stunting growth. It's stunting people driving to earn more money. And I think if we do increase taxes, I think we're going to see some sort of, if I can't imagine the Chancellor doing it. But also there's something to be said about, is the Treasury money being spent correctly now as it is? So obviously giving them more money, is that the best idea?
Well, in the end, the only way the economic activity increases is if people spend more money and businesses invest more money. But as we heard in the last hour from Tony Earnshaw, a businessman, he was saying, look, there is no incentive to do any of this at the moment. In fact, there is a positive disincentive to do it. And I don't know how we get out of that.
Yeah, one of the saddest things I'm seeing is the next generation feeling like they aren't welcome in the system. Lots of young people I'm speaking to have had graduate schemes pulled because businesses just don't see the need to employ young people anymore because it's becoming more expensive and more difficult for them. So young people having their graduate schemes pulled, they don't feel like they should be earning more because it's going to be taxed anyway. Yeah, it's a frustrating system.
It is. We're doing a lot of gloom and doom at the moment.
I know, I'm so sorry.
Let's see if we can do some positivity in the next half. Now, let's buck our socks. Do you buck your socks? Pull our socks up.
Pull your socks up. Let's manifest.
Now, you were kind of right in what you said about this tax trap. The 60% tax trap was actually the late Alistair Darling, when he was Chancellor, who introduced it in 2010 when Gordon Brown was Prime Minister. So it's 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And nobody has thought to do anything about it.
I have said, I've actually said this to the Chancellor herself because it was brought in purely because of, the reason Alistair brought it in was because we were privatising NatWest. Well, no, we were publicising, we were bringing it into public, and now NatWest has been privatised again, surely it should be reversed. And I said that to the Chancellor, and she was like, it's not that simple. I was like, why not? Why is it not that simple? Why do we have to make things so complicated? And the answer is, because it brings them more money.
Well, I mean, you look at the tax code. In 1997, I think the tax code was something like 5,000 pages long.
Yeah.
It's now 22,000 pages long. It doesn't need to be like that. I said to Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, in fact, when he was coming in to do an interview with Andrew Marr, I said, I've got this great idea, really simple thing that won't cost you any money but will be incredibly popular. Just make a promise to reduce the tax code to the size that it was in 1997.
Yeah.
Businesses would thank you. Even, I mean, it won't necessarily save them money, but it'll be so easy for them to issue tax returns. But his eyes sort of glazed over.
Shock.
Anyway, last time I offer an opinion. Well, no, it won't be. It's 9:32 on LBC. Keep your calls coming. 0345 6060 973 if you've got a question for Abby Foster on any aspect of personal finance, the cost of living crisis and the effects of the war in Iran on your pocket. It's 9:32. Daisy Steele has the LBC News headlines.
Files released by the government show Sir Keir Starmer was aware Peter Mandelson had maintained his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein after he was jailed for sex abuse. They also revealed the former US ambassador asked for £500,000 as a severance payment. The Treasury agreed to pay him $75,000. 32 countries, including the UK, have agreed to release 400 million barrels of oil from emergency reserves. It's hoped it will help to steady prices, with Iran warning they could reach $200 a barrel as it continues to block the Strait of Hormuz. An inmate has appeared in court charged with the murder of Ian Huntley. 43-year-old Anthony Russell is accused of attacking the Soham killer at HMP Frankland in County Durham. LBC weather, a windy night, especially in the north and west. Heavy rain for the north of Scotland and Northern Ireland. The odd shower elsewhere, a low of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm. LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
Right then, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life? Anglers, ramblers, climbers, five-a-siders, surfers, gamers, bikers, hang gliders, book clubbers. Are we up for it? Let's go all in against cancer, all in to help fund life-saving research. Sign up to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
When you're smiling, don't let missing teeth stop you smiling. At Banning Dental, our experts could restore your beautiful smile with premium dental implants. See online for our price match promise. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
It took me less than 30 seconds to request my repeat prescription on the NHS app.
That's quicker than making this brew.
And I saved time by not ringing the GP practice.
Win.
Plus, with notifications turned on, I know as soon as I get a new message.
Big win.
So there's more time for this tea break.
So did you go to that restaurant? We're delivering an NHS fit for the future. Request repeat prescriptions and turn on notifications to never miss a message. Tap the NHS app.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
Abby Foster is here, LBC's personal finance expert. She's also going to be taking your calls a week on Sunday from 9 p.m, sitting in for Dean Dunham on the LBC Consumer Hour. Right, a flood of texts are coming in. Let's take some calls as well. 0345 6060 973. Jane says, is there any likelihood of support for those of us on oil heating, no gas available here, as the cost to fill my 500-litre tank has doubled from £400 to £800? Though it's admittedly now going down. I've turned my heating to minimum, as this increase is just ridiculous. Well, when I lived in Norfolk, we had oil heating, and the price fluctuation was astonishing. I mean, you could pay £300 for a tank, and then a couple of months later, you'd be paying £600. And it's now, Jane, you're the second person I've had a text on here to say it's gone up to £800. Do you think that the government is likely to come up with some sort of support package here? I think it's probably too early, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, there's been talk of some sort of household support fund. And obviously, Keir Starmer talked about the warm home discount, but obviously that's kind of, it's a nice thing to say out loud, but it's 150%, it's £150 discount. It's not really, and also you have to qualify, there's lots of rules. So yeah, I would say what you're currently doing is great, obviously trying to be efficient with your energy usage. But yeah, unfortunately right now there has been no, I again emailed the Chancellor's team the other day and I was like, what is happening? When Ukraine hit, obviously there were packages, there was lots of conversations, but there just seems to be a lot of silence at the moment. I think it's just a waiting game.
Well, it is too early to say, isn't it? Because this conflict we're only 11 days into, is it 11 or 12? One or the other. No government is going to make a judgment based on something that could, in theory, end tomorrow.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think I think a lot of people are hoping it, and the government are hoping it for a slightly different reason, because they don't want to have to implement a policy that becomes moot.
Let's talk a bit more about energy, because the energy price cap is there till July.
Yes.
What are the options for the government after that?
For the government, I suppose it's that they can bring in a new energy price cap and ideally not massively increase it because, like we said, yes, we're price takers when it comes to oil prices and energy prices, but we do get a lot of our oil from not too far away. So hopefully it means that supply is not a massive issue. But yeah, right now the cap, obviously, ideally it saves the average household, but there is no average household, like £117 a year. But the new price cap, I can imagine for the summer will be slightly higher, and they will, or I say the government will come out and say, well, it's because of the Middle East conflict and the war. But I would say if you are someone at the moment, if you'd asked me a week ago, I'd say check your tariff and try and get a fixed tariff. But I think a lot of fixed tariffs have been pulled now. But do have a look, because if there is a tariff that's better than just being on a variable, do take it.
Do you think as consumers we've got so used to the government bringing in various support packages like during COVID, the energy price cap as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that we automatically now think, well, it's the government's duty to help us without actually thinking, well, where does that money come from? Because in the end, there are only three sources for government money. And you think back, you're far too young, but you think back to the 1970s oil crisis in 73, 74, nobody ever thought it was the government's responsibility to try and bail the consumer out.
Yeah.
We all had to suck it up.
I know. I think, do you know what? I think when I'm teaching in schools, something I explain is how we ended up with rising inflation. And obviously a lot of people are shocked when I tell them, well, furlough played a huge part in that. We printed money. And I say, well, what do people think happened with furlough? Suddenly millions of pounds was just basically given out overnight. And actually, that was going to come back at some point. And I don't think a lot of this is one of my things, and I do say this to their face, so it's not like I'm speaking about them behind their back, but it's one thing I say to the government all the time. I don't think there's enough education around what they do. They just do it and then expect the rest of the world to understand. But, with furlough, we've effectively printed money to pay for the situation. And then we ended up with inflation because obviously, unfortunately, printing money is not free. It drives something, and it's often inflation.
Steve says, do ISAs form part of your estate for inheritance tax purposes?
Oh, love a bit of inheritance tax conversation as an accountant. Yes, they do. So in the UK, a little bit of education for you, inheritance tax is 40%, but it's only 40% on anything above your thresholds. So you have a nil rate band that is £325,000. So that's effectively an allowance of your estate that you hold, and above that you might pay 40%. However, if there is a property within your estate that gets passed to a direct descendant, that £325,000 goes up to £500,000. And if you are married, you can do something called a spousal transfer, where all of your assets, including your allowance, so including up to your £500,000 of nil rate and resident nil rate band, get transferred to your spouse. So sometimes people think that the allowance is $1 million, and technically it is, but you have to be married and you have to have transferred your allowance to your spouse. And then above that $1 million, if there's things in your estate that are above that, then they're charged at 40%. But yes, ISAs, to answer the question, do form part of your estate, but can be transferred to your spouse.
And why wouldn't they be?
Yeah, so you would expect, exactly. And they can transfer the allowance as well. It doesn't eat into their allowance.
Wesley says, "Hi Iain, my tip is uplifting."
Love it.
Sadly, Wesley doesn't go on to say what the tip is.
Oh, devastating.
Which is a little bit disappointing of you, Wesley. If you'd like to tell us what your uplifting tip is, keep it clean. We'd love to know. Let's take this one from Chris. Could you ask the expert, her name is Abby, can my dad sell me his house at a slight discount to market if he's selling to his son? So if his house was worth 200k and I bought it at 180k, is that allowed? He would leave 90k in the house for me and I would get a 90k remortgage to pay off my brother's share. That's slightly complicated. From Chris in Greenwich, says, is this legally okay?
So this actually sounds like an accountancy question from one of my final exams many years ago.
Happy memories.
Yes, happy times.
Well, you obviously
happy
passed
times.
them.
I did. So thankfully we were all right. And I've got some, basically, as I don't want to repeat myself, but this is all financial education and not advice. I am not your advisor, Chris. But the quick answer is, in theory, you can, but you would have to pay tax on the difference because the government obviously don't like loopholes and wouldn't want you to just pay an under market rate.
But how would that work? Because surely Chris could say, yeah, but I think the value is this.
Yeah, so in theory, if you went and got the value of the property valued at 180k, you could pay 180k for it if that's what it's worth. So that would
slip your local estate agent 20 quid.
I'm saying absolutely nothing, Iain. But in theory, obviously, if it's valued at 180, that's what you pay, then it's completely above board and that makes sense. But yeah, if you paid a massively under market value, in theory, there's parts of it that could be considered a gift, but then you've got the 7-year rule, so they have to live for 7 years and then it's a gift. Or you could have to pay tax on the difference because they'll say, well, you're basically trying to manipulate
basically,
the system.
if you have a good accountant, you should be able to do it. That's what you're saying, isn't it? Reading between the lines. She's looking very coy.
I'm an accountant that likes being an accountant. I don't want to lose that on at 9:40 on a Wednesday.
No, and I wouldn't want to be held responsible for that
there
either.
You go.
So
exactly.
Let's move on. Wesley has been back in touch with his
brilliant.
tip.
Love it.
He says, "Hi Iain and Abby, I pay my mortgage weekly instead of monthly."
Okay.
I mean, how weird is that? I've never heard of that. Have you?
Well, I have from a budgeting point of view. But go on, how's it positive?
Well, he says, e.g., if my mortgage is £1,000 per month, I divided that by 4, which is £250 per week. I'm with you so far, Wesley. If I pay £250 per week multiplied by 52 weeks, I end up paying an extra £1,000 a year. I've been doing this for the past 6 years. And have overpaid my mortgage by £20,000, and my repayment years have dropped by 3 years from 18 to 15. So why isn't everyone doing that?
Well, because lots of people don't have the ability to overpay their mortgage. Like we said, lots of people can't even save. So overpaying feels completely out of reach. Some banks as well, because I get asked a lot about, should I overpay my mortgage or contribute more to, I don't know, pay down my student loan, all the questions. Some banks, so be careful because some banks won't let you overpay. They might let you overpay a little bit, but after a while, why wouldn't they? Some banks just don't like you overpaying your mortgage. They might charge you a fee for doing it because obviously they make money off of you paying at the rate that they want you to pay. Because obviously with Wesley, he's going to be paying it off faster, which means he's going to be paying lower interest to the bank.
Well, it also means that when he's paid it off, he might want to buy a bigger property because he's got more money. So that's surely the short-termist approach by the banks. I mean, who'd have thought?
Well, exactly. But I think, they can't guarantee that Wesley might not just sit in his house forever and not ever need the bank again. So I think
Wesley is he seems to me like a very aspirational person.
We love that. FIRE movement. It's the financial independence, retire early. Apparently, it's the whole, paying off all your debts and saving so you can retire early, apparently.
Trouble is, retirement means something very different, I think, to a modern generation. In that, I suppose it depends what job you're in, but I think most people now don't look at retirement in the conventional way. Well, you're 65, you sort of retire. I mean, I'm only 2 years off that, so it's in my thoughts. Well, could I ever actually think about retiring lock, stock, and barrel and just sort of? I mean, I'd love to have a nice life where I could just sort of go on nice holidays and sort of binge watch various series on television the whole day. I don't think I would.
No, I'm 31, so in my brain I'm like, I love my job, just want to work forever.
Yeah. Well, I just can't imagine the day when I don't have some sort of regular thing. And
yeah, exactly. Need purpose.
Yeah.
I think we run towards retirement, but then what happens once you retire? Do you lose your purpose, or do you just like slowly do a little bit less, and just live a bit more exciting life? I don't know. Or a more
I don't know.
calm life.
Maybe you're doing the show for Dean Dunham. I mean, next it'll be sitting in for me, and next I'll be out the door, and you'll be doing this.
Absolutely not. No, we'll still be having.
Oh,
these chats.
everybody's cheering in the gallery. Yeah, look at them.
Oh, they are.
Such loyalty.
Oh, that's savage.
I think I'm going to end the programme here.
Please don't.
Better not, though. 9:47.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Donald Trump says the war in Iran will end soon, but has anything actually been achieved? Your calls on that. Plus, why Winston Churchill could soon be replaced by a beaver on Britain's banknotes.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Turn up your taste buds with Dolmio Intensify pasta sauces. From mild creamy garlic and black pepper to bold smoky garlic and sun-dried tomato. Whoa! And spicy smoked paprika and chili. Woo! Try Dolmio Intensify. Pasta sauces with serious flavor. Dolmio, yeah!
Wrong tool for the job? Don't make that mistake with your van. Get up to 30% off selected new Toyota vans and pickups with a warranty up to 10 years or 100,000 miles with every qualifying routine service. Visit your nearest Toyota centre or visit toyota.co.uk/van savings for more details. Savings on selected vans and pickups ordered by the 31st of March 2026. UK residents. See toyota.co.uk for full details. T's and C's apply.
With over 50 years' experience, Fidelity can help you feel confidently invested. Make the most of your annual allowances by the 5th of April with our expert insights, excellent service, and wealth of investment options. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
Did you know a new traffic-free Oxford Street is coming? This year, the Mayor of London will begin to pedestrianise London's flagship high street, creating more space for everyone. That means soon you could be hearing less.
Excuse me, coming through.
And more. A bit less.
Come on. Sorry.
And plenty of. To find out more, search Oxford Street Transformation.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to recharge yourself and your phone. To stretch out, sit back, and when you hear "all change please," you'll know you already have. Go with your flow with great deals at thameslinkrailway.com. Terms apply.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
9:49 on LBC. Personal finance expert Abby Foster is with me answering your questions on, well, all sorts of different personal finance aspects, really. We were theming this hour around the war in the Middle East and how that might affect things, particularly inflation, particularly mortgage rates. But we've strayed a little bit wider than that now. Let's take another question here from Andy. If you do want to call in with a question, 0345 6060 973. So Andy says, my partner and I are considering, oh, it sounds grand, doesn't it? My partner and I
love that.
Are considering moving in together. We have two options. The first of which is to have a buy-to-let mortgage for both of our properties and combine the remaining equity, or we can both sell and combine our equity to buy a house now, given the mortgage rates at the moment, and combine that with the taxes associated with renting. We're struggling to find something which is economically viable, and it's becoming increasingly more complex. And with the cost of living, we feel like we're running out of time, and it's becoming more difficult for us to save. Do you have any advice? And the whole of that text was written without a single full stop or comma.
I can feel that.
Very difficult to read out.
Yeah, I'm overwhelmed by the entire content, to be honest. So sorry, break it down for me. So they want to buy.
They're moving
together.
in together.
Yeah.
They say if you combine. Hang on a second. Let me go back to the beginning. They're moving in together.
Yeah.
They've got two options. First of which is a buy-to-let mortgage for both of their properties.
Okay.
Combine the remaining equity or they can both sell and combine their equity to buy a house now. But given the mortgage rates at the moment, and you combine that with the taxes associated with renting, they're struggling to find something which is economically viable,
Right.
and it's becoming increasingly more complex. And with the cost of living, they feel that they're running out of time and it's becoming more difficult for them to save. Do you have any advice?
Gosh, Andy, running out of time? I think you've got time. Everyone's hopefully got more time. But I would say, firstly, if you're moving in together, I want to weigh in here because I have a lot of friends that have moved in with partners, and things they'd forget to do is discuss their own personal finances with each other. So I would say if you are moving in together and this is the first time that you're combining finances in any sort of way, you want to discuss your income, you want to discuss your debts, you want to review credit scores, and spending habits between you and your partner to understand, if one of you is saying, I'm struggling to save, okay, what does that look like? And then if the other person is managing to save, understanding how they're doing it. So decide how you want to live as well, because having a buy-to-let, if you both then obviously, I'm assuming you've both got properties on your individual selves, and then you're buying to let those, you will both become landlords. And so understanding what that looks like for you from a tax perspective, because if you are earners, I was going to say higher earners, but it doesn't really matter like what earners you are going to have to remember that you're then going to be landlords. You're going to have to filing self-assessments, and obviously with Making Tax Digital coming in, you're going to be filing the 4 reports and then the self-assessment that goes with that. So you're going to become landlords, effectively property owners. If you don't want that admin or financial burden element, you probably don't want to consider a buy-to-let, or if you do, that's fine. Or versus the combining equity, so selling both properties and then combining together, understanding what that looks like from a split as well. A lot of people don't discuss the money beforehand. If you're bringing in much more than your partner, or they're bringing in much more than you, understanding what that split looks like. So yeah, I'm not sure I have the final answer for Andy, but I would say a lot more discussion probably needs to go on. And it's not necessarily, I don't think even this Middle East conflict should weigh into that as the first instinct. I think it should be, what do you want your futures to look like, I suppose.
And also, I'm not suggesting that Andy and his partner are about to get married, but if they were to get married,
exactly.
there are lots of, in that situation, there's some serious considerations, because if you are a married couple and you have 2 properties, there are tax implications on that.
Huge, yeah, because obviously you can only have one primary resident. If you're if you are a couple,
there's actually a positive disincentive to get married.
Yes, there's some real positives for things like inheritance, so like death. But when it comes to properties, yes, you only have, if you're a couple, you have one primary residence. And so if you have one home that you live in as the 2 of you, and then you have 2 properties that you're renting out, that's a lot of tax going on, a lot of admin.
Yeah. Oh, bringing back memories. Leslie says, please ask Abby, is there a way to not be married but still leave everything to your partner, including pensions?
Not from a tax incentive. You can create things like trusts. It's quite expensive to do. But yeah, it's why you find a lot of people head to marriages very late in life, because the tax implications. So you can... Yeah, in theory, you could, with your pensions, you fill out something called, what's it called? There's a document that goes with your pensions that basically declares who you want your pension to go to. I always advocate people reviewing that every few years, because I have heard it go to, pensions go to ex-partners because you've forgotten to rewrite them. But yeah, unfortunately, one of the best is to be in a civil partnership or a marriage, because you get the spousal transfer.
The whole concept of common law partner,
not a thing.
That's not a thing anymore.
No, that hasn't been a thing for many years. I think it's a bit like a wives' tale. It doesn't really exist. You might have been together for 9 years. It's irrelevant in the eyes of the law. You can obviously you can write a will that explicitly says you want it to go to this partner. And if your estate falls under 325,000 and a property involved that's going to a direct descendant, so under 500, then maybe the inheritance tax bill is not something you need to worry about. But if it goes above, you do want to make allowances.
Chris, because he's clever like this, has found out what this form is called.
Thank you so much, Chris.
IHT 409.
Oh, delightful. We love it. Accountants just love a number, don't they? Couldn't be something more exciting, could
if
it?
accountants don't love numbers, there's no hope
Well,
for the
exactly.
rest of
What's
us,
the
is
point?
there?
What is the point in us?
Andy says, hi Ian and Abby, I'm living in my late father's house, which is in a family trust.
Mm-hmm.
I'm planning on paying my sister a little under the market value to what I can afford, as I'm a single guy. Is this allowed so I can own the property outright?
Well, it's not allowed. In theory, you can do what you want. It depends who the trustees are and what the trust document says. So you want to speak to an accountant specifically on that to work out if it's within that. Sometimes, yes, the beneficiary can live there like more cheaply. But yeah, I would say, yeah, it really comes down to what the trust is laid out as. And you may find there are some tax implications in the future if you haven't abided by those trust rules.
Somebody else says here, is it Taz? What if you have a religious marriage, not a civil one? Well, you're in deep trouble.
So a religious marriage wouldn't therefore technically be married, no?
No, you
get married in a church, you're married, aren't you?
Yes, but it has to be registered with the state. I think he's just talking about a religious ceremony.
Oh, right, no. So you do need to be registered with the state as well, yeah.
What subjects do you find that you get asked about most?
Do you know what? Sadly, it is inheritance tax a lot. And it's funny because actually it's only 6% of estates in the UK pay it, but
everyone aspires to pay it in a
weird way. Yeah, they do. And actually, I think people, because it's 40%, people get so irate about it because they're like, it's so unfair. And I'm like, yeah, but you actually going to pay it? And I say this to so many people. I'm like, spend your money. I say this to my parents all the time. I'm like, I don't want an inheritance tax situation.
You're so lying.
No, I really don't. I'm like, go and live your best lives. They're in their 60s. Fly first class. I don't need your money. Go and do it. Live best lives. So yeah, inheritance tax, saving for kids as well is a big topic. Okay. So yeah, all of those topics.
Well, that's the end of the hour. Hope you've enjoyed the hour, everyone listening. Hope you've enjoyed it, Abby, and we look forward to your programme on Sunday week at 9 o'clock on LBC. And thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back tomorrow from 7. If you missed any of this evening's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinion. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Spur. But right now, it's Ben Kentish.
Thanks very much indeed, Ian. Hello, a very, very good evening to you. Welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish right here on LBC. On the show,
prices are coming down very substantially. Oil will be coming down. That's just a